In competitive chess, the weight of a win, draw, or loss is all on one's shoulders. It's easy to feel alone. Those lonely days are over.
Oh my goodness.
The Pro Chess League is back. Once again, in chess, teammates matter.
The Blitz take the win.
By hell, you just won a ticket to the playoffs for your team.
Welcome back, PCL. A unique collection of teams, each with their own personality of different colors, shapes, and sizes. There are gnomes and knights, chess bras and bishops, and whatever the heck this is. The PCL is the only place where the best players in the world risk their fate alongside content creators and players from different levels, ages, and perspectives.
It is match over.
The St. Louis Archbishops returning to the Pro Chess League playoffs.
Entering its 5th season, 16 teams will reboot the PCL legacy with a new format and new schedule. Only one team can be crowned the next PCL champion.
Oh my goodness, not the way she won, and look at her. She can't believe it.
My friends, it's the 2023 Pro Chess League. Which team can rise above the rest? They won't be able to do it alone.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Hello and welcome everyone to the big fight for the final spot of the Pro Chess League playoffs. Two excellent teams will have a hard-fought battle. Only one will remain. And to call the action, I'm International Master Tanya Sachdev, and alongside me, hype, is Grandmaster Robert Hess. Robert, it's going to be a fun day of chess.
It absolutely will be, Tanya. I am hyped. It is the last match of the regular season here in the Pro Chess League. The players, the teams, they can hold nothing back. And the teams are from New Jersey and from India. So I think we're the perfect commentary duo to cover the action.
How on earth are we going to stay unbiased today as commentators? But that's what we got to do. Well, whoever wins chess will definitely be the winner. And the Pro Chess League, the last 5 weeks have just flown by, and today is the final fight. Let's take a look at where we stand. Now, the Indian Yogis and the Gotham Knights were the first to punch their ticket into the playoff with 3 back-to-back wins. Phenomenal performance there. And then yesterday we had the St. Louis Archbishops and the Blitz join that get-go green spot of the qualification. Robert, very well deserved.
It certainly was deserved, especially because when we went into the season and you look at the top heavy lineups of the Archbishops and the Blitz, we have Fabiano Caruana, Lenier Dominguez, and the rest for the Archbishops. We have the two-headed monster of Alexander Grishuk and MVL tried out every single week in the lineup. But it's not just about the top boards. We saw heroes made in this Pro Chess League season. Alice Lee has been a fan favorite, and she's beaten super grandmasters for the Archbishops. And then Mahel Boyer had some clutch victories for the Blitz, helping them into the playoffs.
There are always these expectations from the top board, from players like Hikaru, Magnus, and Fabi, and they do deliver, but we often see the matches being decided on those bottom 2 boards. Robert, they play such a huge role, and Alice Lee, with that performance yesterday, scoring 1.5, she did carry the team over to the finish line. Blitz was super dominating against the chess bras. What a day of chess we had, and we see that down at the bottom board, bottom of the table, Team MGD1 and Garden State passes. One of them will make it through. Now, we started with 16. We will be down to just 8 teams. Let's take a look at the dark side of the moon, and there we've got the teams that have been eliminated so far. Charlotte Cobras were the first one out, and unfortunately joining them yesterday were the Canada Chess Bras and the Croatia Bulldogs. It was a tough fight, Robert, but I have to say, in the end, truly, the better team won.
Yeah, and that's kind of hard to say when Magnus Carlsen typically plays on the chess bras. He was not there yesterday. Anish Giri played excellent chess, but still, the rest of the team couldn't make it happen. So I feel like when you look at some of these lineups, you have these great expectations for the Super Grandmasters and the Elite, but it's not just a one-person match. This is the Pro Chess League. You have to have a good team. And, well, some of the great teams have already made their way to the playoffs, and some great teams, unfortunately, have been eliminated. It's the nature of competition.
Absolutely. Indeed, every board counts, every player counts. And today, this is the match that's going to count. It is the golden, not the golden, we've got to stop doing that. The Garden State passes, but they have been bringing in the golden points so far. They're up against MGD1. This is the big fight for today. Let's take a look at the squad the teams are putting up for this final elimination match. Robert, the Garden State passes with Sam Sevian and Bortnyk. They have been blowing out punches. What a team they have set up. And Alexander Lenderman, super solid there.
Yeah, Lenderman is kind of the X factor, but we have Kamala joining the lineup. I mean, this is a very strong lineup and a very international lineup, just like New York and New Jersey, just across the way there. There are people from around the world playing for this squad. And the Garden State Passers, they may not be the Golden State Warriors, but they would like to collect that golden ticket into the playoffs. And I think this is a great lineup to help them do just that.
Well, the players know what they have to do. They've got it. This is go big or go home. It is the end of the road. Out of these two teams, only one will go through. We've been talking about the players here, their performance. Today, we see Kamala Denova. She's making her PCL debut. We've often seen Carissa Yip perform on that fourth board, but that's been switched up. Now, the two big performers for the Garden State Passers have indeed been Sam Sevian and Alexander Bortnyk. And we see there, not just for their team, but they have been par excellent on the Pro Chess League as a whole. 2 of the top 6 highest win percentage is by the Garden State Passers.
And Sam I am Sevian, we know he's a super GM. He was in the Global Championship a year ago, but Bortnyk Strong continues to be Bortnyk stronger. He's working out. He's flexing those muscles, and you see with a 75% win percentage from somebody who's 2,600, right? The players on this list here, Nakamura, Carlson, Weyi, Semi Caruana, they're all super grandmasters. And Bortnyk is saying, don't forget about me. I can punch above my weight too. And he's been a powerhouse for the passers.
Absolutely. And Sam has played every single week. I mean, that is a phenomenal result. He is currently at 12.5 out of 16 on that top board. Robert, only second to Magnus Carlsen. What a performance by Sam. Now, it is really the moment to continue doing that. He has to deliver on that board for his team today. Bortnyk as well with a smashing score so far, 9 out of 12. So 2 big heavy hitters there. But of course, they've got a test by fire coming up. They're up against a team. Look at that. All those middle numbers. Grandmasters above 2,500. Headlining it is Arjun Erigaisi. He has had phenomenal performances at elite events in the rapid format. This one's going to be a tough match.
Oh my goodness, look at this all-Indian, all-Grandmaster squad. When Harika is board 4 and you see her rating is 2-5, 2,500 plus on all 4 boards. Normally in the Pro Chess League, when you have a Super GM on the top board, you expect somebody maybe 23, 2,400, not with a GM title on the last board. The MGD1 squad says, not so fast. We have an experienced veteran player who's participated in so many Olympiad teams with you, Tanya. So we know what Harika is capable of, and she will not be an easy customer. She's, in fact, won some great matches for MGD1 with plus scores. So, I don't want to face off against this team.
Not just her, actually these 4, this squad that the MGD1 has put up, it's exactly the same one that they had in week 3 where they took down the California Unicorns. Now, all these 4 players so far have actually had a plus score in each of their outings. That second board, Adiban, he's known as the beast for his aggressive and attacking style. He's on a 4 out of 4 in the Pro Chess League so far. Harika, you mentioned, she's super solid. I've been a teammate with her. I have played against her, and let me tell you, she's one of the hardest players to beat. Her style is very Wesley-like, where she makes the most of the opportunities that she gets, but keeps things under control. And I really think it is these middle boards, that bottom board, that will decide today's winner. But the big question is not only who will win, but by how much are they going to win, Robert?
Yes, this was our featured question for week 5. You know, you could use that command predict, but you can't vote anymore. That voting already is closed. But essentially, is this going to be a lopsided match, a blowout with over a 2.5 point spread? That means 9.5, 6.5, or greater for a team. Or will this be a close one where it's something like 9-7 or a nail biter with 8.5, 7.5? Tanya, I know the prediction are close, but I'm still going to give you a vote. What do you think is going to happen?
You know what? I'm going to sneak my way out of that and try to be as non-biased as we can while the matches are not yet underway. But Robert, once again, I know that this is going to be a close fight. We look at the lineups, we look at the squads. It's clear that this one is not going to be, well, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I'm hoping and I'm praying that we do take this down to the wire and we do have a blitz tiebreak, because that's what we love as chess fans. But it all depends on how these players perform for their teams. These are the board assignments. And Robert, looking at them, comparing them, I see that it's only that board 4 where there is a huge gap.
That's right, because look at the spread between the top 3 boards. Pretty much the same rating, no matter if you look at the left or the right side. But Harika, her experience, her level of play has been super strong. But in the Pro Chess League, you can't just rely on your previous accolades and accomplishments. Just because you're a GM and have been for a long time doesn't mean that some of the upstarts won't beat them. We have seen it time and time again. For Kamala here, she may be the lowest rated player, but she can definitely land a few upset punches, so MGD1 needs to be careful. Despite the advantage in rating on that board, you can't take it for granted. Every single game has to be won over the board.
And we've seen that happen, Robert. We've seen that ratings are indeed just a number in the Pro Chess League. We see huge upsets. We had Josephine Heinemann taking down Hikaru Nakamura at the very start of the league. And just recently, yesterday, we had Alice Lee with her phenomenal performance. She won against Bogdan Daniel. She almost beat Injik, drew with him. And we know that upsets are plenty, and that's what we love to watch. Now, the one round where we often see that happen is round 1 in these matches, because these are indeed the most lopsided matches. We've got the board 1 playing against the board 4, and eventually this evens out. We've got Sam against Harika, and this is that one case where to me it doesn't feel that lopsided.
Yeah, what are we? And big international Swiss like Gibraltar or Isle of Man. This is an over-the-board event where the first-round pairings feature
Pro
2
Chess
grandmasters.
League, hello.
Yeah, welcome to the Pro Chess League, and welcome to the super strong MGD1 squad. So for Team Garden State, they get the black pieces, but we saw how powerful those 2 are. They're 2 of the best scorers in the entire league. And then down on the bottom 2 boards here, you said Adiban, a perfect 4-4. We know he's a beast. It's not just his nickname, it's his style. And then Arjun Erigaisi, he gets black, but he's playing Mariyurt Kamaldinova. And that's a matchup I'm curious about, because if we can see her take even a half point away from MGD1, that'd be great news for the passers, because MGD1 does have that rating advantage.
I could agree more with you. I think these half-point steals at the bottom board are often more valuable than the top board scoring super heavy. We see that difference happen on that board 4, on that board 3, and 100% if Kamala Dinova is able to survive against the very scary, the very strong Arjun Erigaisi in the first round, that will be exactly the kind of start that the Garden State passers are looking for. She does start with the white pieces, so that at least gives some hope to keep things solid. Now, moving on to the top 2 boards, we see it's Harika and Diptyan who are going to try to keep things together with white. It's going to be a lot of give and take. The more I look at the lineups, the rosters, it's clear that this is indeed a very close match, and it's going to be all about which team gets that 8.5 point. Robert, that's the dream today. That's the aim today, because 8.5 points doesn't only mean match win, it means a ticket into the playoff. Let's take a look at our match format. We've got a 10-minute with a 2-second increment. And Robert, we know that with this, it is all about who can keep their nerves, who can perform under pressure. Those time scrambles, we see brilliancies and blunders happen.
We certainly do. We also see heartbreak and jubilation, because some teams, they'll be thrilled by how their players perform with all the nerves out there, and others, well, they'll experience sadness because their teammates may have dropped a game they shouldn't have. But that's the nature of the beast. We have the beast playing for MGD1, that is Adiban Bhaskaran, but we have great players, and it's all play all, Tanya. I'm super excited for this matchup. It is our last match of the regular season of the Pro Chess League. I don't think the players will hold anything back.
I really hope they don't. And as you said, they really can't afford to hold anything back. They've got to come out with all guns blazing because it is go big or go home day for MGD1 and the the Garden State passes. I'm loving it. It is match time. We've got lift off in just a few seconds. You mentioned the beast. You mentioned Adiban. I wonder if he's going to go for any of those cowboy openings. Are we going to see 1B3? What have they prepared?
That's a great question. I think somebody we won't see 1B3 from is Harika, though. She gets the white pieces against Sam Sevian. And Sam I Am, he is actually playing in an over-the-board tournament right after this, the American Cup. He faces Fabiano Caruana. So that is dedication to the squad. And, well, it's dedication to the Caro-Kann because it may be all pawns, no hope, according to Queen's Gambit. But I think Sam is hopeful to score victory here in the first game of the match.
Wow. And the players blitzed out their first couple of moves, but Harika's the first one to go into a bit of a think tank after the fourth move that was just played with a6. Sam needs to take out those pieces. He finally does it. He does challenge that knight on e5, but this is not a very topical Caro-Kann opening.
No, but I think that makes it a good choice from Sam because Harika, as you said, she's very well prepared and she also likes solid positions where she's a slight plus and she can try to maximize that advantage. Here we already see knight tension, and if you take this knight on c6 and this pawn captures towards the center, we don't have a symmetrical structure that already contains some imbalances in the position. Not that, it's that big of a deal, but Tanya, I feel like when you're seeing an opponent who's playing fast, and you're the less comfortable player, less prepared between the two, that can be scary even as early as move 5, as we see her thinking.
Yeah, and I had to have a check because we both know how strong Harika's openings are. So the fact that she's taking her time, it does mean she's not in familiar territory. And in fact, Robert, that move a6 has only been played 8 times so far. So it is a new position, it is new territory, which is why Harika's taking her time here. She strikes in the center with c4, and it's clear that Sam's plan of getting Harika out of the book has succeeded.
But it looks like she might have taken Sam out of his book in return. So we're in neutral territory, and that means we're in for a fight. So c4 was played, and you're hoping that black takes this pawn on c4, because then, and only then, you throw in this knight capture on c6. Just to very, very quickly show you what that looks like, black ends up with a bad pawn structure, and white has a lead in development with the bishop on c4. Black has these bad pawns. So that's, I think, is something that Sam wants to avoid. He is not going to capture on c4. Maybe play a calm move like e6. Okay, knight f6 first instead. But Tanya, they're both thinking. They're both not in their opening repertoire, or the preparation out the window. I think I like this already from a match perspective.
I'm loving it. That's exactly what you want to do. And that's what we see these top boards do in these early rounds, especially where they go for these unusual opening ideas. Speaking of unusual opening ideas, I see one more that's happening currently. Let's zoom out for a moment. We will, of course, jump back into this as it heats up. But Robert, take a look at that top right board. Bortnyk against Diptyan Ghosh. I mean, I'm still not able to understand how the position got there. We've got a queen on b3, that b5 pawn is attacked. The d5 pawn is also looking weak. Meanwhile, at that bottom left, Adiban against Alexander seems a lot more sane, a lot more normal. That's a position in the Queen's Gambit decline that we see very often. But that top right board, what on earth is going on there?
I don't know, so let's dive in. This is the matchup between Diptyan Ghosh and Alexander Bortnyk. And excuse me, is that really a bishop on b7? Because I see a bunch of black pawns and a light square bishop. I don't really get what's happening, but what I do understand, Tanya, is there is a lot of tension between the pawns over here on the queen side. So will white's spatial advantage start to crumble because black is chiseling at those pawns? Or will white maybe even be able to win a pawn because there's also a pin along the b file towards his bishop? What do you think, Tanya? Whose position do you like?
I'm loving this tension, and the fact that white is taking time to decide how to neutralize it, it just comes down to what decision is made, who it actually favors. Do you pick up the pawn on c6? I don't think it's advisable to pick up the pawn on b5 just yet, simply because it allows black the option to open up the a file. You want to get your side pawn closer to the central pawns. After c takes b5, you can pick it up with the a pawn, maybe even with the c pawn, but I would be very tempted to open up that a file, and my rook is suddenly in the game. The other decision of taking on c6, it also allows black to bring out a piece. It just feels like It's the kind of tension that you might not want in a classical game because your opponent has so much time to handle it. But in these formats, it's so tricky as white to take a decision here.
But I like what you were saying about the tension. White didn't just take on c6 because that could allow the knight to get out. This knight is stuck at home. No legal moves. This bishop staring to a brick wall, and this pawn on d5 and its own pawn on c6. And Diptai Ghosh keeps staring into everybody's soul, and he's trying to get into the heart of Black's position here because this pawn on d5, now the rook on d1, there could be a problem for Black with the rook winning the stare down against the queen. So Tanya, I'm not seeing easy moves for Bortnyk to make. He has taken on d5, and if pawn takes back, he will have to play d6, knight d7, but we know what happens when you play d6. This knight may land on the c6 square.
Yeah, that is a big hole in Black's position, and it's very far down the camp. I mean, if a knight does land there, that bishop on g2 defending that square from behind the pawn, there might be a rook on c1. White has a clear target and a clear plan to play for, and that is all you can hope for when you're playing rapid, that you can make quick moves. The rook will land on c1, the knight will go to d4. But meanwhile, Bortnyk needs to find a way to defend that. Now, that knight from d7 can be put onto e5 at the right moment to take control of the c6 square and also say, hello, sure, I've got the c6 weakness, but there's a c4 square where my knight is headed.
Yeah, no, this knight can jump around. You said maybe it's a c4, maybe it's a c5 at the right moment. And this b5 pawn is just threatened, and it can't capture an a4 because you lose the bishop behind it. So what Bortnyk has done is he's accepted reality. He may just drop a pawn on b5, but he wants compensation in the form of quick development, in the form of connected pieces, harmony for them. And if it's only just one extra pawn here, he probably believes that his rook can join the party and he could try to win it right back. So I think that Diptai Ghosh is better, but I think Bortnyk is also comfortable in these types of positions. He's kind of like a wily coyote. He's just running around. He's just trying to create chaos. And here, I think the chaos does favor white, but Bortnyk, he kind of shines in positions just like this, even if objectively they're worse for him.
And look at this. This is another knight jump. Exactly what you're saying. He's echoing it, just trying to jump around, create a chaos on the board. He goes knight c5, and the point is that if you give up that bishop, that dark squared bishop, yes, you could win a pawn on b5, but it gives a long-term advantage to Black with the bishop pair. And watch out for that d5 pawn. That is a big weakness. We've got to take a look at this, actually. Can white pick up the free pawn on b5? Because, Robert, yes, d5 is hanging, but it's also a pin along the d line. Does Black go rook a1 just to make sure that white's rook is out of the firepower that it has on the d file?
Let's analyze that because it's a very good point from Tanya that the d5 pawn is loose, but if you just start taking on d5 right away, you could be in trouble with a pin. So if the rook a1, you distract the white rook away, and then you can play bishop takes d5 because the rook is no longer pinning the bishop. That means e4 doesn't happen. And if you play rook d1, thankfully for Black, because e4 is a winning threat, you would slide the queen all the way to the corner. Now, this looks scary. I think this needs to be evaluated perfectly because there's also a new pin in the world, but I guess according to the engines, it's okay for Black because when this knight moves anywhere, Black can play e6 to protect. It looks scary, but I guess it's just enough to hold.
Wow, but you got to calculate these lines, and you don't have that much time to do it. Now, it is very dangerous to even think that you're walking into these pins, but of course, Bortnyk knows no danger. It looks like he's headed in that direction. We do see a rook trade. It will be super brave of him to pick up that d5 pawn. These lines that you were illustrating, even though they work out, and we know they work out because we have the eval bar, but from a human perspective, it's hard to make that decision.
It is, but Bortnyk, he's great at blitz, he's great at bullet, he's great at rapid. He's got it all going on, but Tanya, it seems like your eyes are taking you elsewhere.
Yes, because the Pro Chess League is great at keeping us on the edge of our seat. We've got to zoom out this very instant into our bird's eye view. What on earth is happening on that bottom right board? Black's king on g7. The rook is still on h8. This is an absolute mess. There's a queen on h4. I don't really see an attack for Black. How on earth did Black's king march all the way to g7?
That is a great question, the bottom right. I also have questions, left and right, because I'm looking at these games. Alex Lenderman with white against Adiban Bhaskaran in the bottom left over there. That looks like a quieter game where Lenderman's just trying to improve his knight. His knight went to the rim, but it's not so dim as it jumps forward into a more advanced square. And then we're going to pay off the top left as well. Harika, she's spending her time. She's playing against Grandmaster Sam Sevian. That looks like a very interesting position. I actually like it for white. I think Harika is doing very well in the top left. But yeah, I'm going to be honest. There's no more interesting game than the one in the bottom right. The king is over there on G7. The queen is out in the open. And Arjun Erigaisi has the advantage with the black pieces. So that's good news for Team MGD1.
When we went into the board's eye view or the bird's eye view, both work. Black's knight was still on G8. It finds its way on D4, and it would be great to do a deep dive into the Arjun Kamala Danova board. On that bottom right that we see, Black's knight has landed on D4, and wow, Kamala Danova is going for it on the queen side. She's breaking open C5. She needs to find her counterplay, but I would be terrified of that F file. Arjun doesn't care. He brings his rook. He brings the last piece into the attack, bringing all the toys to the nursery. This is looking scary for white. Knight F3 on the board. Knight jumps. There's an X-ray down the F file. This is great for black.
It simply must be. It's a swap of pawns here. And you can't really go after the black king because even if you eventually get a rook to the c file, black will play rook f7, cover the 7th rank. And that's a multi-purpose move. It defends and attacks. But apparently there's something great. Oh my gosh.
Knight
Tanya,
F3?
This knight's hanging.
Lose pieces, drop off. LPDO. And rook c1 was a huge miss. Yes, you have a check in c7, but Kamala Danova completely missed that the knight on the rim is not even dim. It's gone and dead. And this is busted.
Yeah, just like that knight, white's chances evaporate now because it's an extra piece, a full extra piece for black. So Arjun Erigaisi, he was going on the attack, but full board awareness is essential in chess. How many of you watching, come on, let us know in chat, how many of you sometimes miss that a queen on one side of the board attacks a piece on the other? Yeah, no, I've been there too. I'll raise my hand as well. Just forget that long-range pieces are tricky, and they could take you from the other side. So we see Arjun Erigaisi about to score a victory for MGD1. Tanya, that's great news for his team because they are going to need these early points, especially because it's balanced on many of the rest of the boards.
It's clear that this is game over territory. Black has an extra piece. White has got no attack whatsoever. So it looks like this will be Arjun's game. He doesn't miss these kind of positions. Robert, Kamala Danova needs more than a miracle to survive this. We shall zoom out and see some of the other boards because they are also super messy. No miracles required in the other ones. And the one that catches my attention is that top left board. Sam Sevian taking on Harika. We looked at it briefly. Harika with the white pieces. I love that her queen on d4 is centralized, that bishop on g5 pinning the knight. It just feels like white has so much space.
Yes, definitely. I mean, Harika's playing this very, very well, and she has a legitimate advantage against Sam Sevian because all of her pieces are doing something, where black's pieces, well, they're doing a little bit of something, but it's defending. So if we can jump back in to the game on board top left, and we see that the queen on d4, nicely centralized. Bishop takes f6 may compromise black's pawn structure as you will get double isolated pawns in the f-file. And with her last couple of moves, Tanya, pawn up to f4, pawn up to b4, bishop to d3, just improving all of her pieces, this bishop on c8, it has no future. It's just defending this pawn over here. I wonder if black at some point needs to play a5, but then white will push forward with b5, and that doesn't look so pleasant either.
100%. You want to try and create some play with black, but it's hard to come up with any breaks. And what you pointed out, one advance on the king side, a little f4, one on the queen side, a little b4. You just take more squares from your opponent. You just take more space for yourself. And it's so much easier to make improving moves with white. Don't forget, rook from a1 to e1 can come over and fight for the open e file. Meanwhile, you struggle to look for counterplay for black. Sure, there's a move like 8-6 hitting the bishop, but that just gives a pleasant choice to Harika. She could fall back, as you mentioned, keep all the pressure going, or even think about destroying the pawn structure. I do like the idea of keeping the tension on the board. So Harika's got the idea to either go for rook e1. She could also expand further on the queen side with that a pawn advancing down the board. Sam Sevian, not in huge trouble, but an unpleasant position.
And that's why he is down on time. I mean, this is a significant time advantage for Harika. She's up 2 minutes, and it's pawn on a6. You want to develop your bishop? Well, you might just drop a pawn over here. If you play a5 to save the pawn, up goes b5. You are trying to remove the c6 pawn and get after the d5 pawn and create a passer of your own. So speaking of passer, right, the Garden State passers, they need Sam to save this game because they're already down by 1 point thanks to Arjun Erigaisi's win. But if board 1 for MGD1 wins and board 1 for Garden State doesn't, that is clear advantage for MGD1.
And that's the big hope, right? Harika playing on board 4, just saving these crucial critical points, playing against the top boards of the Garden State passes. Now, this looks like things are under control. Robert, I think we should just zoom out for a moment and quickly check on board 2 and board 3. They're equally important. This is the Pro Chess League. Every single board matters for the team. And I see we've got endgames. Now, in that bottom left board, it's a great strategy when you're playing against Adiban. Get those queens off the board. Just go into an endgame. Don't complicate your life any further.
Yeah, in the top right, it looks like Bortnyk remains down a pawn. So Diptai Ghosh has all the chances opposite colored bishops, which means typically it's likely closer to a draw in many positions, even with extra material. But let's go to that bottom left game, as you mentioned. Against Adiban, smart to get the queens off the board. He's such an aggressive player. Oof. But in this position, he's getting aggressive without the queens. He has a position, Tanya, even material. We do a quick pawn count. It's 6 on 6. But very importantly, black has outside pass pawn potential. White's extra pawn is in the center. Black's extra pawn on the queen side. What do you mean extra pawn? You just said 6 pawns, 6 pawns. That's how I like to view the game of chess. It's not just about counting up the material and saying, we have the same, it must be equal, it must be a draw. No, we look at our pluses and minuses. White's extra pawn is on e3. Black's extra pawn is on b6. And if this pawn gets to b4 and the other pawn to a4, you better be very careful because a pass pawn can potentially be made.
Yeah, those are some really great points you're making. And to follow up on that, I think it's very important for White to try and strike in the center with the move e4 at the right time. But Lenderman says, no, I'm going to keep things super solid, manages to trade off the rook. And now I think with that rook trade, it actually favors White in trying to keep things together. Also notice how White has actually fixed all his pawns on the dark squares. Robert, when you've got a light squared bishop, fix your pawns on the dark squares so that you've got maximum mobility for your own bishop, maximum freedom. Meanwhile, now it's Adiban who's got to keep an eye out on that f5 weakness that you're pointing out. So it's actually the black pawn structure which is coming in the way of that bishop.
This looks like it's going to be a draw. And the reason why we say that, the pawn breaks. You're going to have to push this pawn up here. But even if you do that, and you try to push to a3, the white king is too close. The black king can't join the party because how would it get there? It'd have to somehow magically appear on a square like a4 while you push the pawn up the board. And Lenderman says, this position is so equal that I can give you, I'm going to hand you a pass pawn, but your king will not pass. How is it going to pass along here while the white king just goes this way? The bishop can't move because f5 is loose. That's the downside of having pawns in the same color as your bishop. You're going to need to protect it, and that means that white can do no wrong at this point, just shuffling the king back and forth.
Yeah, it looks like it might be ending this very moment, and we see a repetition happening, and we have a result just about now. And this one ends in a draw. Let's quickly zoom out as action is on the other board. So we know that it is still advantage team MGD1 as Arjun wins his game against Kamaladinova. But that top left board, anything can happen. So many pieces on the board. And Robert, I think we've got to do a deep dive on that one because that's where the Garden State passes should have big hope. But I see our eval bar. It says Harika is the one in driver's seat.
Yeah, in the top right, it's still advantage MGD1. So both top left and top right, in fact, bigger advantage in the top right now after Bortnyk's last move. It seems like Diptai Ghosh could score a huge victory for MGD1 if he can convert his advantage. So I don't know which game to choose. Let's go maybe to the top left just because the top right, limited material. This one a little bit more complex with so much material on the board. And Tanya, it's advantage Harika very clearly. Black's pieces just are passive. And, the passers don't want to, just have these pieces like this. The bishop staring to own rook, staring at its own pawn. White perfectly centralized. And with that last move, Tanya, could there be queen d3? Could there be a battery going for checkmate? That would be a pretty devious idea from Harika.
That's exactly what she's setting up, right? You make this little move like bishop c2, and you've got ideas of giving a checkmate in just a couple of moves. 8-6, I like that Harika keeps the tension. She doesn't trade off immediately. She falls back with the bishop, maintaining that pin. And what you're mentioning, Queen d3, that is scary stuff. Black has to think about how to deal with it. You never want to make a move like g6. It only causes more weakness, makes that dark squared bishop of white on h4 even more powerful, and that f5 break. That's going to become a reality. That's going to smash down the position. It looks like Sam is in big trouble, and look at the clock. He's down to 30 seconds.
Yeah, this is scary territory for him. He's been great all season long, one of the best performers in the league, but he might have to find his best performance to date. I mean, Tanya, I'm not really seeing a move for him. He can't move his rook. If he trades, well, thank you very much. Then f6 is a problem. And queen f8, he gets ultra passive here. If rook takes e6, he's going to take with the pawn, and that way he protects his knight with the queen. He has left the pin, so that's the good news for him. The bad news, though, he's down to 18 seconds, Tanya. This is not fun.
What happens after queen d3? What does he have in mind? Queen f8, great, but you just take away the f8 square. Queen d3, and Harika decides instead for another plan, b5. I'm sure there was something wrong, some defensive resource. That's why she didn't go for it. b5, the computer, the eval bar loves it. But
Yeah.
whoa, and she picks up the d5 pawn.
She took away and if rook c6, knight e7 check wins at least the rook, and the bishop is loose. She won the house. This is hanging, that's hanging. She wins a rook, a full rook, by taking here and here.
This is game over. It's not an exchange. You also lose the bishop on d7, but there's queen c5 check at the end. That is what he's counting on.
But he missed something. There's a detail. The king cannot escape. So if the queen takes d7, queen takes c5, you could play rook f2. You enter a pin voluntarily. Because watch this. She's going to play rook f2. We can analyze it if she doesn't. But if bishop d4, there's back rank checkmate with rook e8 coming, and Harika will win this game, and she sees it. She's spending her time wisely. She's going to play rook f2.
Robbie, you can see, she's feeling the win with her movement. You can see the tension. She knows she's so close to it. She puts her hand on the head. That back rank detail that you pointed out, that is going to be the deciding factor in this game. Sam Savian is still as a statue. He knows that he's messed it up, and Harika finds it.
Yes, she plays rook f2. He quickly plays g6. Now, he is going to try to get her in time trouble. He has a passed pawn. There's opposite colored bishops. Sometimes attacking things happen, especially with pins, bishop d4 coming. But opposite colored bishops go for the attack. She could switch diagonals now, go after this f7 pawn. I feel like the black king is being hunted.
Well, the only thing she has to take care of is this bishop d4 threat. Now, unfortunately, you can't sidestep with your king to h1 because that rook on f2 hangs. Harika says, I'll go rook d1, defending that d4 square, keeping everything under control. The bishop and the queen eyeing f7. This is game over. She's doing it clinically.
This is amazing stuff from her. I mean, just every single move with purpose. And now Sam's still under 5 seconds. Harika 35 herself. So she does not want to get in time trouble. And that's what Sam's doing. That's why he's prolonging the game, is he wants to see her get down to 15 seconds because that's when mistakes happen. This rook
Queen
is
A8?
hanging on it.
Hello?
Yeah, that's a good trade. Good simplification for white.
She had queen b7 and there was no way to defend that f7 pawn. I think that might have just wrapped it up sooner, but it doesn't matter. She is a full rook up. She breaks the center. She breaks the king side. The rook will join the attack. Just do a little lift on the king side. Well done. h3, making sure there's no back rank ever.
And she gives up the pawn to open
it.
a file. She had queen d7. That would have traded queens before. But now black has 2 pawns for a rook. That's, of course, advantage white. But Tanya, this is what we're talking about. Time scramble situations. She needs to avoid getting down to bullet times herself. I mean, this is worrisome when she's not finding a knockout.
I'll just say, Sam just looks so calm right now. He's not even moving. It's like we're seeing a photo of Sam. Finally, he does it. Everything's fine. But it really looks like he is still keeping whatever chances he can. h7 coming in, but that bishop on f6 controls the h8 square. It's still not a mate. She's picked up that pawn, and that is it. Harika does it. And you can see that she knows this is a big point for her team, the celebration.
And it was a big win, a big moment for her. I mean, the way she played was excellent, and there's only one game remaining, and we'll get to that in a second. I just want to point out this variation very quickly. Queen c5, Sam was relying on bishop d4, putting all the pressure on this rook, which is pinned, but the king is getting mated. Rook e8 check, you take, queen takes, and you can't go to h7, illegal. If you go queen f8, bishop h7, a distraction tactic at the end of the line, wins the queen, wins the game. So Harika finds some nice stuff. Let's go away from this one because we still do have a game in progress. It is Alexander Bortnyk in a terrible spot against Diptai Ghosh. Tanya, this could be 3.5 in favor of MGD1.
We did have that blowout question as a featured question for our chat, and the first round seems to be the answer here. This could be a 3.5 win. They will pull away if Diptyan Ghosh is able to convert this. And Black's biggest problem is that his king is so far away from the action, while White's king super close to the king side. Rook G5 is coming next, picking up that H5 pawn, and there's no way that Black can fight it.
Yeah, Rook G5, King D5. That's one of those attempts where you say, this king and pawn endgame, there's some drawing chances, but King F4 would be a smart way to go. You're told, trade pieces when you're ahead, but look at this, King D4, very smart try. If Rook takes E5, King takes, this is actually a theoretical draw, and that is what Bortnyk's aiming for. Look at this, Ghosh has no draw for you. King up, King march, give me this pawn, give me the game.
That is going to be game over once the h5 pawn falls and you don't pick it up with the rook. You keep the rook to defend that g3 pawn. The king marches over. Oh my god. And we see it on Bortnyk's face. He is giving up on this position. And he should be, because that's 2 pawn down. And Black has got no chances of getting his king to the other side of the board to even fight these pawns. It's going to be a matter of technique. But I believe that Diptyan Ghosh, the Grandmaster from India, will be up to the task, Robert, in this one. What a huge win.
It's massive. It would give them a 3-point lead. And right now, he's just being careful because there's Rook H8 check. Maybe this pawn is going to drop. But you can even give away this pawn in many positions if you get the activity. He says, no, why should I give up material? Let's just get my pawns going forward here. But look at Bortnyk. He's playing stubborn defense and great move.
Don't take on G4. Don't take on G4. Rook A3 wins the rook on the spot.
Yeah, but Bortnyk's being tricky here. He's just saying, are you really going to push this pawn? It may, in fact, be winning, but Rook H8 check, and the king could take the pawn, but maybe there's Rook A4, kicking that king back away from the G5 pawn. Now the white king is free to go. This is a win. The king is cut off.
Oh, and he's doing it. And wait, Rook A7, what a trick he did there. If you pre-move, then you lose the rook. But of course, Diptyan Ghosh was very alert. He picks up the point, and with that, makes this a huge margin. Wow, I wasn't expecting that, Robert.
What a funny final move, though. But if your opponent's pre-moving, you can catch them. And no, he was not caught. And right now, Diptyan Ghosh helps MGD1 to a 3.5 first round. Tanya, it's incredible stuff for Team MGD1.
Just amazing. I think very few of us could have predicted this. We see an all Grandmaster lineup there, but also the Garden State passers have been excellent, pulling out some very crucial wins against much higher rated players. But this one was a blowout. Now the Garden State passers clearly need to win a match, a game, a round, and win it big, to try to get the score a little closer. You don't have to go all out in the very next round, but you've got to reduce that margin. 3.5 is a huge pull away score there. And the Garden State passers are not pleased.
No, they're not at all. But as we just saw a feature chat from none other than Daniel Naroditsky, Danya's saying, it's not over yet. The passers can come back. But look at all the zeros there, Tanya. That's what's scary for them, is MGD1 is capable of almost blanking them in the first round when you have the most lopsided matchups, at least from Sevian's perspective. So Harika, she played a great game there.
Absolutely, Robert. And a score from each of the players on the MGD1 team. That's exactly how you want to start. There's a big round to coming up. So much action.
Yes, there is. And before we go to a break, we just do want to mention this great event. So if you're loving this team chess action, don't miss round 7 of the Collegiate Chess League tomorrow, Saturday, March 18th. This CCL season has been incredibly entertaining, with future global superstars leading their college teams through exciting matchups. Don't miss out on your weekend team chess event over at twitch.tv/Collegiate Chess League tomorrow. Use the command CCL in chat to follow the action. Tanya, I know I can never get enough of team chess.
It is the most fun and the most entertaining. There's so much at line. There's personal ambition. Plus, you really want to be the MVP for your team. You want to take them over to the finish line. And this is what we're seeing happen today as well in this big fight for that final spot of the playoffs. We've got a big round 2 coming up where the Garden State passers need to make a comeback. They need to make it quick. Do not go anywhere. Robert and I will be right back.
And instead, the gloves came absolutely off. The wheels came off. Wow.
Oh. The sip of tea, the celebratory, we did it. When I saw that reaction, I felt what you were feeling. Like, I felt this transfer of energy of like, that kind of moment, that kind of upset is so exhilarating. So can you just talk a little bit about like how you're feeling in that moment, what was going through your mind, what it means to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult to believe. Like, I don't know, I just didn't see this scenario happen. It was funny, we were in trainings camp until a few days before this with the German national team, and all the guys from my team were there. And we were at lunch, and I said for fun, okay, don't worry, I will take care of Hikaru.
Yeah, you
It
did.
actually happened.
Just played an exciting game and want to see if you got a brilliancy? Or maybe where you could have improved? Chess.com's game review is just a click away. Game review is a fast, fun, and instructive guided review of your games. See your accuracy and your opponent's accuracy. Check out the eval graph for an instant overview and scroll down to see how many great moves, best moves, blunders, and yes, brilliancies you have played. Learn from Chess.com's coach who gives move explanations, opening statistics, and shows you the best lines of play. With retry mistakes, you can get another shot at finding missed opportunities. Try Game Review today on web, iOS, or Android.
Arjun Erigaisi, the Indian phenom, there getting the job done for MGD1 in round one. And what a player he's been at the Pro Chess League. His performance in the rapid format has been phenomenal. He's had a great 2022. What results there we see, Robert. He is truly headlining and at the forefront of this new wave of prodigies that are making a shift in the elite chess world.
And what great resolve he has, because he struggled in the start of 2023. Earlier this year, he played in Tata Steel. He lost, I think, 5 games and didn't win a single one. And then you could think, oh no, he must be in his own head. And he's responded to that with just great chess. He made it to the Air Things Masters Division 1. He played well there. He has been great in the Pro Chess League. So Tanya, with these top players, it's not just about their best results, it's how they respond to setbacks.
And we see this amazing performance in 2022, but Arjun Erigaisi, the other year, which was his breakout year, Robert, was 2018. To just give you an idea of how strong he is, he scored 6 noms that year. That's the year that he became an international master and grandmaster in just a year. So definitely the Garden State Passers are facing a big challenge there with Arjun heading team MGD1. Let's take a look at the round 2 action that's coming up. Now, Sam Savian suffered a big loss to Harika in that round 1. He needs to leave that behind him. Robert, he needs to do a lot of damage control, and it needs to start now.
And the good news is for Sevian and Bortnyk, both of whom lost to boards 4 and 3 respectively of the MGD1. They get the white pieces, so they should have an advantage on the top 2 boards. But we just highlighted Arjun Erigaisi. He gets the white pieces and the biggest rating differential of the round. Adiban Bhaskaran gets white against Kamaldinova. So I think that the passers, they need Lenderman to save a half point against Arjun Erigaisi. That will be very important, as he was the only person to get a half point in the first round.
Indeed, as our feature chat said, what a strong start. I don't even think MGD1 could have thought that this is the kind of start that they would get in round 1, 3.5 half. It is now up to the Garden State Passers. They need to control the situation, and it needs to happen in this round 2. We can see the players are ready to go. Our chat will see the players are ready to go soon as well. Sam Savian against Diptyan Ghosh. That is a big round. As you mentioned, Alexander Lenderman, he needs to make sure that he can at least try and get that half a point against Arjun. Don't give him that full point. Don't let him go 100%. And Sam here starts with the King's Pawn opening.
And Sam Savian, you know he's mad because he just lost a game where he probably felt, I needed that. Not just for himself. He's a team player. He always has been. He is playing in the American Cup later today.
Oof.
And he is playing against Hikaru Nakamura later today. So, excuse me, wait, what was that? You need to prepare for Hikaru? Let me just play some rapid chess. I'm going to play Hikaru how Hikaru plays the rest of the world. Going to prepare by playing. And unfortunately, game 1 didn't go his way. But Tanya, here in game 2, he is blitzing out the opening. But unfortunately for him, his opponent seems to know what he's doing.
Wow, and Diptyan as well. He takes a setup which, again, is not the usual response to the Spanish. He develops that knight from e7 to g6 instead of the standard knight f6 move. But I like how Sam has handled it. Your knight is not in the center, Diptyan. I'm going to strike in the center as soon as I can. And he breaks it with the move d4. And we see that Sam is taking his time right now. So definitely feels that Diptyan's the one who's slightly better prepared so far.
And Sam brings the bishop back to b3. I think that means bishop g5 is next. How did those go together? If black castles, bishop g5 can come out, and there is no pawn f6 to challenge the bishop because your king would be behind a pawn. That means it's pinned. So I think that Sam's just trying to find where he can get his advantage. The good news for him is e4 is not threatened. The bad news is e5 is ultra well defended. And if you ever push this pawn, not only do you restrict your own bishop, you open up the opposing bishop on a7. So I feel like this is one of those games of subtleties, Tanya. And now Diptyan Ghosh, out of his own preparation, they're going to have to find the best moves on their own.
And while they do that, I just want to make a point. If we can pull up the analysis board for 1 second, because you pointed out that these two knights defend that e5 pawn. But now Sam's last move, bishop to b3, could have actually instead picked up one of the two defenders. So instead of the move bishop b3, he could have gone to snap up that pawn on e5. Let's say you take bishop c6. But that is a bad idea. You give up a bishop pair. And now no matter what you capture with, let's say you take with pawn, as you're pointing out, let's start with the knight, Robert. After knight e5.
You tell me. Just tell me the line. I'll follow you.
Let's do it. Knight e5, takes on e5. And now we see that black can put pressure on the e5 pawn. You could make a move like queen e7. And the point is that bishop on a7. What a bishop that is. It's pinning that pawn on f2. It is on a strong diagonal, the long diagonal. There is no f4. Black will regain that pawn and end up having a bishop pair in the middle game. Now, if white instead, we can just back up. This looks great for black. If white instead was to recapture that e5 pawn with his own pawn, it really doesn't help because this time black captures the queen and you trade and black's other bishop jumps into power with the move bishop g4 as you're playing it out. Pin that knight, win that e5 pawn, and once again, after all of that, black's the one who's ahead with the bishop pair.
Yeah, really instructive variation there from Tanya, just showing that white could have won a pawn, but it wasn't worth it. Let's not get greedy. Sam retreats, Diptine goes castles, and now I feel like for white, bishop g5. The queen has to go to e8. It's an awkward square because there's a little rook sandwich going on between the queen and the king, and that rook wants to be on the e-file instead. But for now, black would have to be ultra defensive. It's hard for white to crash through to create a huge threat, but I just like white's pieces. They're much better situated than black's.
Yeah, absolutely. And wow, look at that. He goes further on with d5 and asks a question to the knight. You were talking about the rook getting sandwiched. Is black going to go knight e7 and sandwich the whole board? Because that just looks like something you never want to do. But I'm not seeing a very active move. Sure, you have knight a5 hitting that bishop. But once white falls back with that bishop, what is that knight on a5 doing?
It might get trapped with a b4 push, just to quickly show that this knight on the rim is looking quite dim. b4 at some moment won't be so fun. So the knight might have to keep jumping around back and forth, but that looks awkward. I mean, I really don't think this is an easy position for black to play. And with knight e7, eventually f5. You can't do it so quickly because your king's in line with the bishop, but I feel like black's next moves are d6 and f5, Tanya. And that's why Sam, I'm going to go back because we have the analysis board up. So I'm going to just show that very quickly. That after knight e7, let's say you made a move like h3, some kind of random move. Then black plays d6, and you already see the evaluation bar in black's favor. This is like the best version of a King's Indian because your bishop is on a useful diagonal rather than staring into its own pawn. And you could play f5 with your knight already ready to jump into the action. So, Tanya, I feel like that was a great decision by Sam to play d6. And now that we get this position, this is the live board. Who would you rather have? Well, whose side would you take?
I think I would want to be white here. I mean, look at that bishop on b3. It makes sure that black cannot push that f pawn. And the way Diptyan's handling it with the bishop falling back, I totally get it. You're hitting that queen. You want to get that d pawn moving so that eventually that bishop from c8 can come into play. The other move that you can look at is b5, bishop b7. But it just looks like black is setting up for a game of Fisher Random right now. What are these pieces on the 8th rank doing?
So knight h8 next. Okay, I see what you're saying, but it does look like Fisher Random because what's this bishop doing here? The rook hasn't moved. It does seem awkward, but the eval bar says that Ghosh is playing well. I mean, he's playing a good game of chess right now, and if he can successfully strike with d5, he will have some chances. So what do you say, Tanya? Should we leave these two to their thinking? Because I feel like this position is very complicated, and it's not just Sam who needs to win. His teammates need to do it as well.
I think I feel what you're feeling, and I know exactly where you want to head as well, Robert. Let's bring up a bird's eye view. Talking about striking, look at that bottom left board. White is striking down with that g-pawn already. g4, g5 on the board. Lenderman's king is still in the center. A bishop's trade is on offer. It has been accepted. And wow, white isn't stopping. h4, Arjun, full power.
And before we dive into this game here, just want to look at the other boards as well. The top right and the bottom right, those positions, they look a little bit calmer, much more normal. So it's early starts for those two. Alexander Bortnyk has white in that game. He really wants to win. And for Kamaldanova, I think she's doing pretty decently with the black pieces against Adiban Baskran. So let's dive in now. I know, Tanya, I've just been delaying the inevitable. Let's get right into this game between Arjun Erigaisi and Alex Lenderman because I've been calling Lenderman the X Factor. I'm looking at this position and I'm like, is this really a bishop? Is that a bishop? Because it's staring into its own pawn. Black's best move would be to like throw the pawn away somewhere. But Tanya, when you look at this, white pushed pawns forward, has castle queenside. It looks better for white, but how much better is the big question.
Well, our eval bar seems to say a little bit better at least, and that's the best that you can hope for with the white pieces against a strong player like Alexander Lenderman. This is sort of like the dream start that you can hope for. Now, Lenderman takes a committal decision there, Robert. He wants to stop that pawn storm with the move g6, because really the big question for black is where is that king headed? You don't want to go queenside castling. Well, the f7 pawn is weak for one, but more importantly, it's just so unable with that c file open, all the dark squared weaknesses, c5, b6, the king won't be feeling too safe on that side of the board. Meanwhile, short side castling is even more scary with white's pawn going down the board of h5, opening up the h file. This looks like something you don't want in the position. So g6, it's a very committal move, and what black is banking on is establishing that knight on f5 to block down white's queen, to block down white's bishop.
This is a very clever move by Lenderman. I have to give him credit because if we can bring up an analysis board, the most tempting move here is what did G6 do? Swiss cheese on the dark squares. I want to just put my queen on F6. Please, castle kingside, I'm going to checkmate you immediately. I play H5. I open up the H file. You're going to see the eval bar go all the way up here. So, of course, you're not going to castle to the kingside, but your rook's under attack. So, do you move the rook? They'll say, no, I'm going to castle because F7 will be captured. But where is this queen going? It's in no man's land over here. There might already be a drawing mechanism because if you take this pawn, I go back and forth, and your queen can't escape anywhere. I'm just going to keep... Oh, I guess there is the e5 square. I actually forgot about that square. So I made a mistake here. I own it. But I think that this kind of position...
And rook F2 hangs, it doesn't matter. If you go to E5 as well, I'm loving that line. You trade queens, you pick up the pawn on F2.
Yeah, there's just plenty of compensation for black in the form of activity. So I think Lenderman, he's setting something like that up. He did play rook H8 to F8. He felt like he had time, and now he's finally castled queenside. So Arjun is better. Right? There's no denying it. He's got more space. He is controlling this pawn break over here. But Lenderman is playing this defense quite well.
And speaking of the F7 weakness, that's a glaring point on the board. And I'm just wondering, what does black have in mind if white actually does land with the rook to the 7th rank? Arjun has the possibility now to simply trade on G6 and put that rook on H7. Alexander answers it. We've been talking about the F5 square for the knight. So now everything looks a lot under control. But that bishop on C6, it's a long-term bad minor piece. That bishop, like you've been pointing out, give up that D5 pawn. Find a way to get rid of it. If it wasn't, the evaluation would be a lot different. This is a classic good knight versus bad bishop middle game. Imagine this knight landing on E5.
And Arjun is trying to say good night to the Garden State season because he's going to bring his rook into E5. He'll trade eventually, maybe use the H file, maybe use the E file. And, that is a terrible bishop here. So I love what Arjun Erigaisi did. Let's get an instant replay. Very smart chess from him. He takes on F5 and then just says, give me the dark squares. Because had he captured on G6, I think black, instead of taking with the H pawn and having just a passive position, would take with the F pawn. Opening the rook up, the d4 pawn is loose, just trying to get counterplay of some sort. So I love what Arjun Erigaisi is doing. I don't love it for Lenderman. I feel for him. I've had positions just like this before. It is mighty uncomfortable because you can't do anything active. You're going to sit and desperately try to hold a half point, and good luck to you because you're playing Arjun Erigaisi.
Yeah, and in these rapid formats, that is the worst kind of nightmare for a chess player, right? Just a position where there's no counterplay. You've doubled up your pawn, so there's never going to be a break. There's never going to be a passed pawn. F6 is the big hope in black's position, but even that doesn't get anywhere because white can jump onto the 7th rank. Imagine that. Once you get F6, you trade rook H7, rook E7. You're just making Arjun's life a lot easier. Meanwhile, white's knight will start doing the maneuvering, and Arjun has all the time in the world to plan things. He's slowly improving the position, makes the quiet move A3. And you know what, Robert? It doesn't matter how many pieces get traded here. The queens can get traded. The rooks can get traded. They can be on the board. The biggest advantage for white is as long as that knight is alive, as long as Lenderman's bishop is alive, white will always be better.
There's one thing that Lenderman's about to do. He might be playing rook E4. This is a very fascinating exchange sacrifice because we're talking about the domination of this knight against this bishop. Let's just make a careless move. Let's just analyze something very quickly here. That if white plays king A1, just la-di-da, and black plays rook E4, and say, what are you doing? You're giving up this 5-point piece for just this knight. And then you get a position like this. It says that white is better. And yes, objectively that is true. But you've all of a sudden freed up black's pieces to have some activity. And chess players, we often will give up material if it means our pieces are active. And I think that's what Lenderman would have hoped for. But instead, we see a swap of rooks and rook H7. And so what Arjun is saying is, all right, well, if you go rook E4 now, I'll take your rook, I'll take your pawn, everything's in trouble. So he's just eliminating some of the tactical possibilities. Even if they didn't work out, it was an idea to keep in mind.
That is super instructive. That is such a cool sacrifice you pointed out. Robert, the only question I have is your middle name Petrosian? Because this is the classical Petrosian exchange sacrifice for positional play, and often computers give a huge advantage because the material deficit, but it is the way to go to neutralize white's activity, to sacrifice that rook on E4. That is amazingly instructive. But Robert, instead, Arjun stops all of that by attacking the F7 pawn. So he says, I'm going to tie down your rook to defend that pawn. Rook e7 played. It's clear this is going to be a long grind by Arjun. We can take this moment to pull out and see some of the other grinds that are taking place as the MGD1 team leads with a 3-point margin. Let's bring up our bird's eye view. The action is on everywhere. And look at that top left board. Sam Savian versus Diptyan. Now, Sam has managed to create quite a stronghold in the center, planting that bishop on d5. The central knight on e4. I'm liking his position, and it looks like Diptyan's on the defense there.
It definitely looks like Diptyan's in the defense in the top left, and in the bottom right, we have to give credit to Kamala Denova. She's outrated by the beast Adiban Baskaran, but she's no worse. I mean, that endgame is looking like one where she can hold if she plays properly. And the top right, I saw Bortnyk's last move. I don't think he's very happy that he lost the first game. He played h4, and after Harika's response, whoa! Woo!
h5 on the board.
Yeah, we got fireworks there.
This is fireworks, and that means that's exactly where we're headed. We've got to put up the Harika Bortnyk board. What just happened?
h4, and Harika plays e4, trying to kick this knight. But what Bortnyk says is, sorry, my knight's not under attack because your queen is behind this pawn. Rooks win these stare downs, and he just pushes forward with h5. And the fact that Harika is now thinking here, that's not a good sign for her, because if she plays g5, I think we are going to see a sacrifice on that square.
That is inviting it, right? You go g5, and that's exactly what she's looking at. It's so terrifying to play this move, because after bishop g5, and we can just point this out with arrows, black recaptures with the pawn on g5, and then white can jump in with the knight, pick up that pawn on g5, give a check. The king has to fall back on h8. Even the e4 pawn hangs, Robert, in that line. And what's going to end up happening is that white at least has 3 pawns, but that's the least of the advantages. Black's king is so unsafe. h6 coming in, the h file is open, the g file is open. Harika is in big trouble, and we're seeing this played out. And look at this. Look at the twist in the move order that Bortnyk has chosen. That is so clever and so pretty at the same time. He says, hey, pick up my rook, because I'm going to pick up your queen if you do that.
Yeah, I love it when the move order just switch, because sometimes you think it's going to the same place no matter what, but there are differences. Maybe the queen, doesn't have as many squares as it did before. I don't think it's a big difference maker, but for instance, if you make some kind of careless move, perhaps it does change the nature of the position. But we are going to see knight takes g5. In fact, where is this queen even going now? Maybe d7? But after knight takes pawn, white has like 8 different moves that look good. h6, rook e1, rook f4. This pawn on f7 is targeted. This is a huge advantage for Bortnyk.
Yeah, but I love just start with knight g5, give a check, and then think. Because black never has the option to step onto g8 because of this h6 idea that you're pointing out. Bortnyk knows that he's close. And for Harika, of course, it is a difficult position to defend. And what makes it even harder is that she has 1.5 minutes on the clock. And defending this kind of a mess when you're under attack, I think this is going to be a tough one. This is definitely advantage Garden State passes, despite white not having a piece. He's got all the attack on the board.
h6, I mean, every single move with purpose. Bishop f6, you are not taking this pawn and opening up this file. And woo, rook d1. I think we're about to see this queen give itself up for the rook and the bishop. And then we have a weird material imbalance, Tanya. What's it going to be at the end? Is it going to be a rook and a knight and a bishop for black, for a queen and 3 pawns? We don't see material imbalances like this very often. So Tanya, white is better because black's king is open, but I could see this turning if you're not accurate for Bortnyk. He is ahead of the clock. He does have a lot of time to think, though.
It's very important for him to keep the momentum of the attack going. He needs to find ways to set up tricks like knight f7 at the right time with the rook jumping onto e8. And as I speak about that, I feel like, is that a real threat? Well, I see, for example, let's say you make a move. I'm not sure, just any move in this position, a non-move. White does, wow, that is like literally the worst non-move that you could have come up with. And I'm just wondering if knight f7, rook e8 are threats with the queen jumping onto g8. And black's got to watch out. You lose the rook on f7, you lose the game, and this could be a big disaster. So that's exactly why Harika steps back with the rook on d7. She controls that f7 square, so no more tricks. Bortnyk, again, moves with purpose, attacks that bishop on f6, queen g7 is mate in 1.
Yeah, f6 played, and that's actually a huge move for Harga. If she get a rook to h7, or in some positions her king to h7, depending on how Bortnyk responds, it is a lot of material for the queen. We have a rook and 2 knights for a queen and 3 pawns. So this material imbalance is not easy to assess, and mistakes can happen because the good news of having the rook and 2 knights is you have many pieces that can start piling up and attacking some of whites. But the clock, Tanya, the attack and the clock, that's the difference maker here, and rook e8 is lights out.
And that's it. Knight d5 was a huge mistake there by Harka, and this allows this rook to jump in. And you're pointing out with the arrows, the problem is not the trade, but the fact that the queen picks up the other rook in the end, and we can see the disappointment in Harika's face. She survived the worst of the attack, and it looked like she was back in the game, but there the seconds are going down. There's no way to fight this. You can't keep the game going. Rook f7 runs into queen f7. She throws in the towel. Bortnyk there takes the point.
And he gave a little head nod. Some appreciation for his play. He's often streaming while playing, so he is multitasking. But Bortnyk wins. Let's go out of this one because it does cut the deficit from 3.5 to 1.5. That's the good news for the passers. The bad news is in the bottom left, Arjun Erigaisi still has this knight. I mean, look at the stranglehold he has over the dark squares with some sad light square bishop for Lenderman. That's in the bottom left. In the bottom right, though, we got to give a shout out again to Kamala. She's outrated by several hundred points, but she is no worse despite the look of her pawn structure against Adiban Bhaskaran in the bottom right.
And I love that. We see that strategy again. You know, you're playing Adiban. He's the beast. He's so attacking, so aggressive. Get the queens off the board. And that's what she does. Let's take a look at that. Let's do a deep dive onto that endgame because Kamala Dinova could save a huge half a point as well for the Garden State passers. And Robert, we haven't taken a look at this game. Let's do just exactly that. Bishop d7 played by Adiban. So he is trying to put pressure. But I like how Kamala Dinova controls the B line. She's controlling that B pawn from advancing. But she has to watch out. Where does she want to move the rook? You either lose the e5 pawn or the control over the b3 pawn.
It's a good point, right? So she decides, I need to move my rook to c5. The b pawn goes forward. She can go rook d5 again, but that gets a bit awkward. I mean, the bishop comes to c6. e5 will be loose in many positions. And this rook now can slide over to a3. So if you're not careful, the white rook can go after this pawn on a7. So I think I would slide my rook back, get that tempo against the bishop. Your king can always go to f6 to protect your pawn. And I think she's best served by defending her pawns.
Well, she gives a check, so perhaps she has the exact same idea. Now she could bring up her king, bring it up to f6, defend that e5 pawn, but instead she has a more aggressive approach. But the drawback of this, Robert, could be that it places it on the white square. If Adiban has the time to only attack that with the bishop, it's going to be hard to defend that e4 pawn.
But I think she has an idea of her own. She wants this king to put on its bishop's hat and go right to d4, right? Let's go like a long-range piece. I'm just going to run along the dark squares. This could be dangerous for Adiban in some positions because a light square bishop, it can't help on the dark squares. But the good news is this pawn is fixed on g6. That's a light square. It's something that can be targeted if the king were to really run all the way over to this side. But I think she's just going to bring her rook back, play solid chess. She is definitely doing well to hold this game.
Well, as things are heating up in this endgame, it's already hot on the other board, Robert. And I say we pull out the bird's eye view because that bottom left board, as we zoom out just for a moment, I mean, there is some action. We have been talking about that knight versus bishop, but look at that. Arjun takes the decision to finally trade off, and that is because the queen is jumping onto g7 to pick up that pawn on g6 if you recapture with the pawn.
And that's what's happening. Let's stay in this view for a second because you look in the top left, it's also a huge lead for the player with the white pieces. So Sam Sevian and Arjun Erigaisi both looking to score wins for their teams. And I mean, Tanya, the top left, it just looks like a mating attack for Sevian. The black king is caught in the corner. Opposite colored bishops don't mean it's a draw. Opposite bishops often means you can attack on a color complex. The opponent can't defend. And it looks like Sevian, oh my goodness, the last move of this game, G6 up there. Let's just bring that up, get the final moments. Oh, that's sick.
Rook h7 is a mate in one. What a threat. And how are you defending this? Hello? Anyone there?
Hello, it's me. I've been wondering if after all these years you'd like to stop a checkmate in one because I don't see it. There is a bishop on d5. Your king can't stop it. And rook h7 is mate in one.
And that's it. He's got 17 seconds, but he could have an hour on the clock and he wouldn't be able to survive this. He throws in the towel. Diptyan Ghosh resigns. Sam Savian is back with a win.
Big win for the passers. They have won 2 games thus far in the second round of action. They have cut the deficit to just 1 point. But if we zoom out here, we have to look at the other 2 games. It looks like Arjun Erigaisi, he is on his way to securing a full point for MGD1. And the bottom right, that looks like, to me, a very clear draw. Kamaldinova, she is defending this perfectly, Tanya. It's rook and 4 versus rook and 4 on the same side of the board, and her king is very active. That should secure her the half point.
Those 2 bottom half boards that we see in front of us, we need, not we, but the Garden State passers need half a point between these 2 boards to win the match. Either Lenderman needs to survive this carry against Arjun, which looks really hard right now, or Kamaladinova, she needs to hold this position. I like that she's got the control over the clock. Robert, do you want to jump in to the queen and pawn endgame that we've got? It looks like Arjun's got a huge advantage, and that's because of the G pawn. But he's got to be slightly careful of some perpetual checks. You know, queen pawn endgames can be trickier than they look.
They absolutely can, because the king can get checked a bunch of times, and sometimes the win is bring your king out into the open. Not in this position, and Lenderman, his king is up on b6, but a3 check. That's a very clever try, because you are bringing the king up, and now there are a ton of checks against this king. Unfortunately, queen b8 is game over. Your king has to step to the c file, and you simply win the black queen. If you go forward, you get checkmated 1 move, either with the queen or the pawn going to b4. So Tanya, we entered this game at the right time. This is mate 1.
And he walks into it. He gives a mate with the pawn. Queen b4, b4 were both mates, and Arjun gets the job done. Wow, that means we've got... But the good news for the Garden State passers is while this one goes down, Kamaladinova did hold the game against Adiban. Robert, that means that the Garden State passers are back with a 2.5 win.
They are. And this game was the one between Lenderman and Adiban. This is the final position between Adiban, and Kamaldinova. So Arjun Erigaisi gets the win. It looks like Kamaldinova did a great job holding rook and 3 versus rook and 3. That means the passers win this round 2.5, 1.5.
It really does come down to that 4th board creating these upsets. Really brilliant endgame. And there's so much pressure. You know, it seems like it might be easy to hold these rook pawn endings, but when you're going down on the clock, when you know you're playing against a high rated player, when you know that so much is at stake and your team is counting on you, anything can happen. So really kudos to Kamaladinova to keep things under control and hold that game against Adiban.
Yes, and now it's a 5-3 lead for MGD1. We see Arjun Erigaisi, perfect 2 out of 2, but look at the rest of the team chipping in. So it's just those bottom boards as well. They're outscoring the passers, but the good news for the passers is they just cut a 3-point deficit to 2, which means they're getting closer in the match.
And I love it. Look at those bottom boards. We've got Harika with a 1 out of 2 score, and Kamaladinova doing her bit for the team with that draw over Adiban. And we've really seen at the Pro Chess League, women chess, the women boards, just how they've been creating upsets and giving us all the excitement. The excitement doesn't just stop at the Pro Chess League, because the women's candidates finally comes to a head on Wednesday, 29th, after taking down 6 of the strongest women in the game. Lei Tingje and Tanzongi now are vying for a seat across the reigning Women's World Championship Wenjun, and we've seen Robert Wenjun, the kind of magic that she's created in the Pro Chess League for the Shanghai Tigers. She's going to have a tough fight, and we will be bringing you the live camera feeds and commentary by Katie and Kostanюk, the chess queen, here on Chess.com.
Yeah, the women's candidates, it's awesome. It determines who gets to face off against Ju Wenjun. But right now, we're in the middle of this intense matchup in the Pro Chess League. So Tanya and I, we're going to take a quick break. We'll rest while we can, because when we get back, the action will continue here in this matchup between the Garden State Passers and Team MGD1.
Playing online wasn't a fun experience for me. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I played on ICC or I played on Play Chess, it was great, but like, I wasn't a chess professional. Some of it felt too fast. Some of it felt like, oh, you gotta know like console commands to like start a game or challenge someone. it just didn't feel like inviting. It felt like a gated thing. At the same time, the web was changing. So there was these kind of new technologies that were happening, and there was other stuff on the internet. You know, there was like super cool blogs, and there was like great news sites, and there were bloggers, and you know, there was chess content. It was emerging. So I was like, all right, Jay, let's do this. Like, let's build our own thing and do it. You know, this is not a knock on what anyone else was doing. It was working really well for some people. But again, for me, where I sat, what I wanted, temperature of porridge I wanted in this story did not exist. And I wanted something that felt just right at home. And that's what drove me to build what I wanted as a chess fan. I started a chess teaching business in elementary schools where I wrote a curriculum and I hired instructors, and I would get kids excited for chess, and they would go do that. We ended up doing chess in like 100 schools. And this is while I was going to college. That kind of led to this opportunity where I was like, man, I'm like buying a lot of chess sets, and there's a lot of interest in chess. Maybe I can get a discount if I buy them from China. And so I started buying and importing chess equipment from China. I started a website called Wholesale Chess where we were selling chess equipment online. This is long before Amazon was like selling everything. And I did the teaching business, and then I did the e-commerce business. And then while I was doing the e-commerce business, I was like, oh, this is getting really tough to like pay for ads and compete. And I was like, oh, I really want to do a chess community, because then people will come for the community, but they'll also buy some stuff. So it'll work as like a self-sustaining business model. Plus, as a chess fan, like, where's my home? Like, I wanted the MySpace of chess. I ended up buying the domain name Chess.com out of bankruptcy for $56,000. So we started building like the MySpace of chess. We were building a chess community, and that's kind of how Chess.com got born. And that's kind of my interest in chess, was like, as a business, as an e-commerce, as a fan, as a community member, as someone who was playing on other sites like Yahoo Chess and stuff and was very unhappy with it. I wanted a place that felt like home for me. And that's my relationship with chess and Chess.com in a nutshell.
Struggling to improve your game? Chessable is the home for chess improvers. With hundreds of courses by incredible authors like world champion Magnus Carlsen, Christoph Selecki, Andras Toth, everyone's favorite social media troll known as Anish Giri, and so many more, Chessable can help you raise your game to the next level. Most importantly, all of our courses are powered by Chessable's exclusive Move Trainer technology, which uses the science of spaced repetition to make sure it all sticks. Check out Chessable today and get 30 days of Pro for free. Go to chessable.com/begin.
Sam Savian, after a tough start, bounces right back like a champion, winning that last game for the Garden State Passers and leading them to the victory in round 2. He has been a star performer for his team with 12.5 out of 16 so far in the Pro Chess League, second only to Magnus Carlsen. What a performance there. He became a grandmaster at 13 years. Robert, what a prodigy, and he continues to deliver.
Yeah, he is a prodigy, but now he's more of a veteran player. That's what happens in chess. At a young age, you're already a veteran, but he is not a has-been. He is somebody who is in his prime, and he's playing later today at the American Cup. He faces Hikaru Nakamura, and yet first, he has 2 more matches here in Rapid in the Pro Chess League.
Commitment to the Pro Chess League. That's what Sam is about. Sam is the man for the Garden State Passers. And take a look at how the players have performed so far in this critical elimination match. You got Archon with a 100% score, the only one to do that, with Kamala Donova scoring a very important half a point there at the bottom of the board for a against Adiban for the Garden State passes.
Yeah, you just see MGD1 scoring up top, but scoring all around. And the Garden State passers, they're going to do their best to chip at that lead. But we also asked the Discord community for some questions for us. And the commentators, we got what we asked for because you got back to us with these two questions. For those who don't know, members on the Discord server can vote weekly on these mini AMAs for broadcast hosts. Use the command Discord to learn more. And Tanya, question 1 was from Synod Quill, who asked, what was the most exciting match in the PCL so far? What's your answer?
Oh, wow. There have been so much action over the last 5 weeks. And I have to say, so many great matches and moments come to mind. You know, the one with Vidit against Magnus, where Magnus was completely winning and he missed a mate in 3, and Vidit managed to survive that. And shockingly, the Indian yogis made that win, beating the chess pros. And I think that was what, in 3 rounds? That was a great match. And what we witnessed yesterday as well by the Blitz, by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Grishchuk against the chess pros. What a dominating performance. Throughout, Robert, there are so many moments, great moments that come to my mind. Bogdan Daniel missing that queen promotion. We've seen blunders. We've seen blind spots. It's been super exciting thus far. What about you?
Yeah, I think the Blitz winning in tiebreaks against MGD1. That was in week 1, but that was super exciting. Of course, the Norway Gnomes versus the Maniac Shrimps, the mouse slip, the blunder of the rook on F2. That was crazy stuff. But we have one more question, and this one was from Adriana Winter 86, who asked, horsey or bishop?
Is Pony a lad?
I think...
Well, I have to say, I think for faster time controls, I do love the knights. They're just so much trickier, and you just never know what you get. You could be dead lost, but the kind of tricks and forks you can set up, it just feels like a power pack punch with a knight on the board, Robert.
Well, I'm going to save my answer for a little bit later, but the member who gives the best argument gets a prize. So do get involved. You may win a prize. I win nothing. I just got to talk about horses and bishops. Oh my, I'm happy with that. But the next round is about to begin. All right, come on. Who doesn't like a good knight in a Blitz time scramble? So the knight would be the answer in Blitz, and classical is a bishop for me. We don't have archbishops here. We have pastors and team MGD1. So Tanya, round 3 lineups. Who do you favor with these board orders here?
Well, now we see that the matches are getting more and more even as Sam Savian faces Adiban, and we can see the strength of the boards coming up to each other. Now we see the top 2 boards. It's white for team MGD1, and I think Sam's task is cut. He has to create chances. Now, when you are trying to lead up, when you're trying to get the points in against Adiban, you could be black or white. It doesn't matter. There is going to be chaos on the board. There is going to be mess on the board. And Robert, I think that board 1 is going to be critical. No quick draws, no passive positions, no positional fights. This is going to be an out-and-out firefight.
Well, that's what the passers want because they are down by 2 points at the moment. So they don't mind a fight because draws will not be good enough. Now, the good thing for the passers, Tanya, is what we just saw happen is they can get after the MGD1 squad 1 by 1. As long as they keep winning 2.5, 1.5, 2.5, 1.5, we will see them head to tiebreak. So that's the good news for the passers. They don't just have to go all out and win in this round.
Robert, really quickly, 1b3, yes or no?
No.
Yes.
Oh. Hey, we moved 2b3.
It did happen. Let's just call this one a draw between us.
No, actually, I think I'm going to call it a win for you because I was really saying no b3 at all because you're playing Super GM Sam Sevian, but you told me to be quick, so I just said a one-word answer. Tanya, good call by you. He plays a b3 system. The b3 cowboy is having a good time, and Sam Sevian, he's yawning. He's either tired or bored or both.
Well, he better not be. I mean, he's got this Pro Chess League super critical elimination match, and then he faces Hikaru in the American Cup. He's got to wake up, and he's got to do it now because he's playing against the Beast. And now this is typical Adiban, right? He starts slow, and all of us are like, where is the attack? Why is there no pawn beyond the 3rd rank? But it is coming, and there it is, G4 on the board, Robert.
I played this opening so many times from the white side in blitz chess, not in rapid. When you have a rapid time control, it gives your opponent more time to find the best strategies. Now, you see the eval bar saying white is slightly better. I just take that with a grain of salt because this is not about the current position. It's about who is able to come up with better plans. There's a pawn on G4. we may be happy about it as a commentator because we're like, yes, aggressive chess, go for the fight. But as a player, I know that sometimes they get a pawn on g4 and I'm hit with h5. I'm like, where's my king going? I have to move my queen, go this way. And then these pawns start coming at me left and right. So I just don't know. I feel like for Sevian, he's the one spending time right now, but I think he will have his chances.
And this is exactly what we were talking about at the start of the round, right? You can be black, but when you're looking at scoring points, you exactly want an opponent like Adiban who will try to create a mess on the board no matter what. You were talking about h5, it is on the board. Now he needs to decide, and he does it. He pushes that pawn to g5. It can be supported by the h pawn, h4 down the board. Black can advance in the center. White could develop then the bishop from f1 on h3 and put it on this nice little diagonal of bishop h3 to c8. So it really is already quite a fire fest of an opening.
It's a critical position because this bishop, if it wants to just develop, wait, what? I was just saying that. He hung a pawn. As I was about to say it, you can't just develop the bishop because g7's hanging.
Was that a blind spot? Because the eval bar says, yes, you can take it. Adiban says, yes, you can take it. Sam Savian, with his hand on his head, realizes that, yes, you can take it.
Uh-oh. I think that was a blunder. I just think he missed it.
That was a blunder.
Because he played e5 second. You could have started with e5, and then the bishop would have been closed down, and then played bishop d6. So he just dropped a pawn. Sevian, he yawned right at the start of this game, and I feel like he's just not in his best form, and that's really bad news for the passers. They can't afford to drop this game.
I mean, that's just a pawn down. Not only a pawn down, that rook on h7 is going to be stuck there for a while. Right now, you're also playing without a rook. You've got to make further concessions like f6 to bring that rook back into the game, or step it back, lose another tempo. So that needs to be done. Queen e7, and where is the king headed? Where is the safety for black's king here? Queen side looks dreadful. King side looks dreadful. Sam Savian in big trouble. That was a huge blind spot by him.
Yeah, a one-move blunder. His
shocked.
vision wasn't easy, but that was a blunder. Now, how do you survive a game like this? How do we see Hikaru Nakamura when the eval bar is saying +3, +4 for the opponent? How does he survive so often? What he does is he knows when to time it. He knows at the right moment when to play a move like f6 and complicate matters, or when to shut things down and say, I know I'm down a pawn, but where's that extra pawn? Oh, it's on g5, and I have a bishop blocking it, so how are you going to make progress? These are not easy choices. It's going to be situation dependent, but the game is not over just because it says +3 to the side of our screens. What Sam needs to do is he needs to just start speeding up. His position is bad. It's hard to speed up when you're worse, but you're going to be pretty much lost in many of the positions that you're going to play. If you can just create threats, scare your opponent a little bit, maybe knight f8, knight e6, try to get the knight to f4, things of that nature, Tanya, that's how you give yourself a chance.
That's a really nice point that you make, that sure, black has made a big miss, a one-move blunder, but he needs to just get past that and ask questions to Adiban that how are you actually going to win this? But Robert, you were talking about how players like Hikaru and Magnus turned this around. I think a big reason, especially for those players, is that they just live rent-free in their opponents' heads. And they're just there to make them feel that no matter what the position is, you're not winning against us. But this one is a different ballgame. Now, whether Adiban converts this or not, it is a disastrous start for black. It's everything that Adiban could have hoped for. But of course, work to be done. It is advantage Adiban, huge advantage of Adiban, as we can see. Let's zoom out for a moment because there is madness on other boards as well. And look at that top right. We've got a queen out on h4, which now has been challenged by Arjun. Queen g4. So he's happy to trade queens off. And the reason for that is if black actually accepts it, the h file opens up and Arjun's got the bishop pair. So to our Discord community who asked about bishops versus knights, clearly Arjun prefers the bishop in this one. Meanwhile, on the bottom right board, we see quite a classical Spanish opening. But what's a pawn on f6 doing?
It's Diptyan Ghosh. He did that, sort of set up against Sam Savian as well. So he is sticking to that opening. But I'm fascinated by the game in the top right. The one in the bottom left, that looks calmer, very standard territory in some kind of fianchetto King's Indian defense. So the top right game, the queens are off, but that does not mean that we just have a dull position. So why don't we dive in to Arjun Erigaisi against Bortnyk. We just saw the queens come off on g4. That opens up the h-file, but don't go full Bobby Fischer. Don't take this pawn on h7 because your bishop gets trapped. You take, black takes back, you take with your bishop, pawn goes up to g6, and uh-oh, this bishop is trapped. You try to save it with a move like f5, but not only can you probably take this pawn, actually maybe there's no but, just go like this. The bishop remains trapped over here, and black is going to take it in the next move.
Absolutely. So 8-7 pawn, even though it's hanging, do not run for that. I love that Fischer reference that you just said from the World Championship match. And now instead, of course, Arjun has done his classics. He knows it, not going for the 8-7 pawn, instead brings the king to e2. And look at that, Bortnyk still playing with that. He goes a6, says 8-7 pawn still cannot be picked up, but I like White's position. And the reason for that is what we've been talking about, the double bishop advantage. Sure, White's got these double pawns on the king side, but Robert, in this case, it's more of a strength than a weakness. You know, you've got the side pawn that moves closer towards the center. At some opportune moment, an f5 break is always in the air that black needs to watch out for.
f5, you can also move this bishop out, bishop d2, rook h3, rook h1, go right after this pawn with your rooks, and if black plays h6, you have g5. So having double pawns is not always a bad thing. It's because double pawns, inherent to having them, you have an open file. And this rook, just this rook is happy. But when the second rook joins the first rook, black is going to be very unhappy. So I love this position for Arjun. I don't know about a4. I don't see the necessity of it. But he is playing on both sides of the board, just taking space. But I thought he could be more direct by just doubling the rooks very quickly.
And I love that idea. And the moment you point out that idea, I think even stronger than the point of f5 is to get this g pawn rolling down to g5. The reason for that is that you actually keep that 8-7 backward pawn right there, and it's a lifelong weakness. And don't forget the double pawn we're talking about. White can always advance that second g pawn all the way to g4 and make that pawn storm even more mobile. So I love these concepts that you're telling, but Arjun playing on both sides of the board takes more space on a5, and it's getting tougher and tougher for Bortnyk. While Bortnyk tries to handle this very difficult endgame, let's zoom out for the moment, because we've got some interesting middle games as well. Now, we were talking about Diptyan's pawn on f6. A lot has happened on that bottom right board that we see. Things have been traded off. The f file is open. And as someone who does face the Spanish myself, this is a dream position for black. You've opened up the f file. The bishops are active. I'm loving MGD1's board on that bottom right, sorry.
Yeah, that game in the bottom right, I mean, this one is interesting because unlike a typical Spanish, we can dive into this one, the bottom right, as the one on the top left, by the way. It looks like Ariban's doing still very well, but unlike a typical Spanish where you're just sort of jockeying for position, playing slower moves. Excuse me, are we sure this came from a Spanish at this point? There's an open file here, the bishop about to open up. Isn't black currently up a pawn as well? So I feel like white could be in some huge danger if she's not careful.
It was only momentarily, because if we just back up for a second, we can just see how we got here. How is black a pawn up? If we pull up the analysis board, because this is quite an interesting moment here. And as you mentioned, a very non-Spanish-like middle game as well. Let's just go back a move. Diptyan did take the pawn on e5. And then there was a nice little intermezzo there by Kamaladinova, attacking that queen, bishop g5, queen d7, and I expect her to recapture the e5 pawn now. But there's always this doubt of opening up that bishop on a7. That's one strong bishop there. But at least it is an even position materially. I still prefer black.
I do as well. And the good news for white is you have this annoying passed pawn. So black will need to deal with that pawn at some point. But e6, that looks like a pretty big threat to me. So I'd probably slide my queen over to f7, increase the firepower on the f-file, and get this bishop in line with the pawn. So you're not just pushing to e6 now. And these awkward knights, they're great at the moment. Watch out for maybe a knight h4 at some moment. Let's open up the f-file. It might sacrifice a piece, but I just want to get to f2. I feel like white could actually lose this game in a few turns if she's not careful.
Ah, that's a really nice idea. Knight h4. If you pick up that knight, queen f2, and the queen and the bishop lined up on that diagonal, queen g1 check coming in. Super scary stuff. And I'm just wondering if it's time for Kamaladinova to actually trade pieces. And she does that. Knight e3, so she blocks that bishop on a7. And let's just point out that now knight h4 is just not as strong because white simply captures the piece. And queen f2, you have one check, but that's about it.
Yeah, the king slides over.
And you got rook f1 in the end, I think.
Absolutely. Rook f1, because this knight, look at this heroic piece. It protects against the checkmate. The queen wanted to give a checkmate. And if you think, oh, we'll just trade queens on f1. No, that knight also drops back to protect the rook. That knight is doing all of the work in the positions. That's a great line by you, Tanya. I think that goes to show that just because we mentioned a tactic, just because you've seen a tactic in your own games, doesn't mean you should just go for it because it looks cool. You need to see the difference in the position of what has just happened. And that's why Tanya plays c6. Let's just protect our pawns, create a pawn chain. I feel like both sides have their chances here.
Yeah, definitely. It is a game for all three results, and I like that approach by Commentator trying to neutralize all the pressure and the attack that Black has built on the F file. I'm expecting some piece trades on this one. While this develops, let's zoom out for a moment and take that time to see what is the action on our other boards, a bird's eye view. And that top left board, wow, Adiban still with that extra pawn, but what all has happened there, Robert? He's managed to get his king to safety, but White is missing a rook.
Yeah, White is missing a rook. That's the good news for Sam Sevian. I mean, that game looked like it was over as soon as he dropped the g7 pawn, but we were trying to let everyone know you have to play on, make the most of your chances. But if we actually go back to that board in the top left, if we dive in a little bit, technically, Black has a rook. But I'm saying technically because I'm looking at that rook. I'm like, is that really a rook? It's got no space to work with. And White has this crazy clamp going on. Black's pieces can hardly move. So Black has 5 pawns. White has 7. It's a knight and 2 pawns for this rook. And this knight, that's a beautiful stallion on c4 over here. This position is really bad for Black. I mean, I know I was saying we got to just have chances, give ourselves hope. This looks pretty hopeless. And
Adiban is doing Adiban things. He's not going to wait. The position can be as great, but when he sees a move like e6, he's going to go for it, opening up, shattering a Black's king side, but he had to time it well. We spoke about that rook on 8-7 when Sam Sevian blundered that pawn. That rook is going to be a huge problem, and that's what this game has turned out to be. Opening up that bishop, if you take the pawn on e6, the bishop from h3 comes down the board. Bishop e6 looks very scary here. You've got a move like bishop f7, but then you might even be walking into something like g6 on the board.
G6, I mean, actually, you can take first, but g6 is what's going to happen. After king takes, you throw in this move g6 check, distracting the king from the defense of the rook. And once this happens, White wins a piece and the game. It's just extra material. So, Tanya, so many sharp lines in this game, and they all favor White. And that's what happens when you blunder on move, whatever move that was, like move, quickly looking back, it was move 14. So actually it was even earlier than that, but just bad game for Sam Sevian.
100%. And the thing is that he had the idea of e5 to block that bishop, but a one move blunder and so hard to come up with any compensation when your rook is stuck on 8-7. After that, he goes queen d5 because he couldn't have afforded to trade that pawn, amongst other things. Now, Adiban can make this pawn even more monstrous, and he does it. He brings a pawn to the 7th rank. This is all but over for Sam Sevian, and that loss is going to hurt. It's going to hurt the Garden State passes because Sam, leading that team, really needed to keep things under control. He offers a bishop trade, trying to ease the pressure. Some pleasant choices. And he says, I'm going to keep my nice bishop there, attack your queen. I don't see this lasting for too long. The knight is jumping onto e5 at the right moment. Watch out, don't give that e7 pawn just yet. But Robert, all he needs to do is get the queen on this long diagonal somehow.
Yeah, that could lead to checkmate. You could also just bring your bishop and sit on the position. The rook is trapped over here.
Oh.
This rook can't move. This is as miserable as it gets. And Tanya, I do want to point out that if MGD1 scores 3.5 points in this round, the match is over. So MGD1 can actually secure match victory here and now if they can win on the other boards as well.
Well, talking about other boards, well, let's say this one is over and Adiban takes it. We've got to zoom out. So we've got 1 point for MGD1, a huge potential on this. And then we see on that top right, Arjun Erigaisi is dominating that endgame. And it's again about those horses versus bishops. But in this one, the bishops just seem so strong, so powerful with very little play for the knight. White can get in a b5 break at the right time. And what is happening on those bottom 2 boards? Harika still holding her own against Lunderman.
Yeah, the bottom left game, that one just looks like queen, bishop, 7 pawns per side, so we don't need to dive into that one. It looks quite level. If something changes, we'll let you know. And the bottom right looks like Diptan Ghosh is just attacking. He played that knight h4 idea that we were highlighting, so that's good news for MGD1. But let's go to the top right game, because I think many of our viewers, and chat, I'm not calling any of you out, don't worry, it's me too. I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, it's not me too. I just said that to make you feel better. But we're looking at this. It's 5 pawns, 2 minor pieces per side. Why would white possibly be winning here? And the reason why is this knight is in big trouble. Let's bring up an analysis board. Bortnyk might just resign in a couple turns. Because bishop takes f4. That looks like a free pawn. But bishop e7, the knight is trapped. Trapped, you say? I'm going to go forward. Great, knight c6. No, I'm not going to play a6 to distract this one. I'm going to take directly. And once you take back, I play a6. I'm going to go promote. You have to. I have no choice. But can't do that. To cover the a7 square, after king c4, the next move is bishop c5. White is winning this endgame.
I have to say, that whole conversion, you mentioned Bobby Fischer with the rook h7, not giving up that bishop. This whole play with the double bishop pair is very Fischer-esque of Arjun. He's played it clinically. He's played it flawlessly, just showing that how in an equal material position, white still can create the best chances and how difficult these positions actually are for black. As you're pointing out, the f4 pawn isn't hanging, and you can see the distress on Bortnyk.
Yeah, he's completely lost. This is automatic for Arjun at this point. Bishop coming to e7. The knight only safe square is c6, and you just take it, and you play a6. It's automatic for Arjun. He knows he's winning, and that looks like 2 victories for MGD1 about to happen in the round. That means they need to score 1.5 points out of the bottom boards, and I think it's looking quite likely at this point. We may have an early day of it. That's shocking, considering how strong the passers are.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about it at the start of the day, and I was so sure that this match will go down to the wire. We might even be headed to a playoff, but that is a faraway dream right now for the Garden State passers. Let's bring our bird's eye view, as now the hope relies on that bottom left board and the bottom right board. But look at Diptyan Ghosh there on the bottom right. Huge advantage for black. Knight f3. That's a fork. And you just end up with an extra piece. You pick up the rook. You pick up the bishop. All right, no, there is a knight on g4, so still equal material, but you're down a pawn. So not as equal.
I was about to say
that took me a while to figure out.
Well, that's because the pieces are scrambled in the bottom right. Like white's bishop is somehow on f8, but that's because it took a rook. So then black's about to take a rook back. And let's bring up that board, because it is going to conclude very soon. And oh my gosh, the top left. That, oh my goodness. I mean, actually, let's go back to the bird's eye view. I'm sorry I just did that. I'm apologizing through the wall to the producers. Look what Adiban just did in the top left. He sacrificed his queen for the rook. I'm just going to bring that board up. That is just sickening. Like, this game has been incredibly one-sided, but a few moves ago...
stunning. I can't believe it.
The bishop went to
But
g3,
take us through this.
hitting the rook, and after queen c6, the queen went away, defended the rook. That was check on a7. Just give me your rook. Because after bishop c6, if you take, not only do I win your queen back, that's mate on the spot. The king cannot move out of here. And what we did see was the bishop taking the rook, and then look at this. White has, what, 2 minor pieces and 3 pawns?
3 extra pawns?
4 extra pawns. No, 3 extra pawns.
3 extra pawns.
Oh, can't count. It's just
They're
so
scrambled
many.
all over the board. It's so many extra pawns, as you're saying. The D pawn and black's king, it almost looks like it's getting checkmated. Imagine a knight landing on e7, and that's actually not a check, but a checkmate on the board. As you're pointing out, the D pawn super strong. Sam Savian is not in big trouble. He is just completely lost. Knight c4, and you can't take on b3 because bishop e4 would be checkmate. Enough of the torture, Sam says. He resigns. What a point. What a game by Adiban.
Yeah, he was given a free pawn, and he did not take his foot off the gas pedal. He wins for Team MGD1. That's a much-needed victory as they make their way towards winning this match. So we have other games in progress. So let's check out our bird's eye view, just because it looks like Arjun Erigaisi in the top right. Yeah, he's just crushing. He's got a passed f-pawn, in addition to the fact that the knight on d8 can't move. In the bottom left, Harika, Tanya, she's holding completely. Like, she is not worse in the slightest with the black pieces against Letterman. And then in the bottom right, it's winning for Diptyan Ghosh.
I mean, if you look at Harika board, the bottom left board, in fact, it is black who's got this potential f4 break. She doesn't need to do it, but it's always in the air. It is that black bishop on e2, which seems much stronger than Alexander's bishop on h3 currently. The only thing working for Alexander is that b7 weakness, which ties down black's queen. So that is the good part of the position, but it's not going to be enough to win it. Robert, where do you want to head? I think we should consider jumping to the Argent board because it's about to end.
Okay, let's go to Arjun Erigaisi against Alexander Bortnyk. It's opposite colored bishops, but that doesn't mean it's a draw. Look at this. Pass pawn here, pass pawn there. And I think that bishop takes b7 is sufficient at this point. Just take this pawn here. The black pieces cannot stop all of your passers. And for the Garden State passers, it's nearing the end. You can see it on Bortnyk's face. He's distressed because, Tanya, it's very simple at this point.
I can't believe it.
Two passers.
Look at him. Yeah. He's just in shock right now. How did he allow all this? It's like he's just missed something. He's not even being able to look at his own screen.
Yeah, I think he knows that the end is near for the Garden State Passers in the Pro Chess League season. G5 played.
G5, I love it.
Wait, but
Robert, you can't. Oh, wait, I love it, but that's a blunder.
No,
King G5, there's. Oh, King G5. King G5.
Well, so King G5, H7, Bishop comes to F6, but
Bishop
you take
F6?
here, and there's too much going on. So it looks like it should work. But look what Bortnyk just did. He went King F7 back. And now the problem is the bishop can take this pawn and then come to E3 to stop the other pawn on the other side of the board.
God.
This was actually
Look at Bortnyk. Look at Alexander.
It's a draw now. He can't believe it. And the reason why.
He can't believe
bishop
it. It's a gift.
It's a gift because the H8 square is a dark square. So what black will do is bring the bishop to E3, bring the king into the corner, and as long as this king can stay in the corner, then you're going to be able to make a draw. And unfortunately for Arjun Erigaisi, he has let a half point into the hands of Bortnyk that gives the passers some new life.
It really does. Bortnyk could not help smiling. He couldn't stop smiling after that. From being in absolute distress, look at him, a completely shift in the body language. And that's the point that you made. That H pawn is of the wrong color of that white light squared bishop. And white can win a bishop, but it doesn't matter because black's king will find its way to H8. And that is all that needs to be done. Oh my God, Arjun now is the one in distress. He cannot believe what he just did. And G5 was such a powerful looking move. Turned out to be a blunder.
At first glance, it looked like it should be a winner. But Bortnyk had the presence of mind, we'll analyze it again in a bit, to step his king back rather than taking the pawn. And this game now is a draw. The bishop has to take this pawn. The king goes and gobbles up H6. The bishop will sacrifice itself for this pawn. And that means we will have a draw. Lone bishop came in. Arjun Erigaisi. I've never seen him like this.
I have never seen Arjun with these emotions. He is so calm and so composed. Right now, he's just mad at himself for dropping this half point.
And
I've never seen him like this.
Me neither. He's always stoic. And the draw, I think I just saw curse too. I mean, that is surprising. I get it. We've all been there.
Just gets up and leave.
We've thrown away winning positions. But Tanya, I mean, this one was really winning. Like, it looked like any move wins, and that's the problem sometimes. When every move looks winning, you get a little bit complacent, you just make a move, and then he realized a second too late that it didn't win the game. Right here, we're going to go back in time. G5 check. It looks so good. If the king takes, this pawn goes up. The bishop stops one pawn, but it can't stop the other. You play E4, A6. Your bishop looks like it's doing the work, covering both, but no. It has to take one, and then the other promotes. That would be a win for white. But, oh my goodness, G5 check, King F7. You steal this pawn. You play Bishop E3. You stop the other. And Alexander Bortnyk, he stole a half point.
And all he had to do was pick up that B7 pawn. And at first, it looked like G5 was winning on the spot. We saw how the expressions changed, how the evaluations changed. This is how chess is. This is how Pro Chess League is. It's not over till it's over. And the Garden State passers survive to live another game, it looks like. Let's go back to our bird's eye view because there have been some results though. Now, Adiban managed to win his game against Sam Sevian, and it looks like Diptyan did beat Kamaladinova. We have one more game left. Let's rush into that. I think Harika, wow, she's going down here. It is completely winning for white.
Yeah,
I'm scared to say completely anymore.
Yeah, no, I get that. I've jinxed players enough for Pro Chess League season, but it is an extra pawn. It is the same colored bishops. This pawn is very close. If the black king starts venturing towards that pawn, then the white king can go up to g5 and bishop e4 actually just on the spot wins
nice.
g6, and that's that.
And that's it. He wins the G pawn. Gonna win the H5 pawn. And now the only thing is that if Harika is able to give her bishop for that G pawn and get the king to H8, then again we get a very similar idea to what happened, but it's far from reality. And Harika knows it's not gonna happen. She resigns, and with that, Team MGD1 wins the match, but with just a points margin. So we've got a round 4 on our hands.
I can't believe that we have another round. I mean, this should have gone MGD1's way, but Alex Lenderman, he actually won a position that we thought would probably be a draw, so he just outlasts Harika in the endgame. And then Bortnyk survives against Arjun Erigaisi, so we do have a round win for MGD1, 2.5, 1.5. Great win by Adiban, great win by Dipta and Ghosh, but the passers remain in it, and something can happen in this scenario. We saw the Indian Yogis win 4-0 against the Canada Chess Pros earlier in the year, Tanya, and right now MGD1, they have a big lead, but I feel like we saw it on Arjun. He was very expressive. Some of the other players are probably a bit rattled by what just happened there, but all they need is 1 point.
They need just 1 point, and I mean, that lineup with Arjun, Adiban, Diptyan, and Harika, 2 draws, 1 win. Anyway, they're through. But for the Garden State passers, with the way things were going, this is their opportunity to come back. Something that they could have only dreamt of with Arjun's position. And what really hurts for Arjun as well is that he played a flawless game there, Robert. You know, getting that positional advantage. We know he gave up that, just taking that bishop pair, playing it out to perfection. And then when that moment came to finish the game, you make the most tempting move on the chessboard. You make something that you think is going to be a brilliancy, but it just actually takes the brilliancy right out of your hand. And Bortnyk, we saw him in shock after that G5 move. What an end that was. And that means we're set up for another round that's coming up.
We get one more round of action. It will be the 4th and final round. MGD1 needs 1 point from the 4 games. We'll see if the passers, if their luck can continue. But first, we take a break, and when we return, the action between the Garden State passers and Team MGD1 continues here for Chess.
What's the best way to follow any chess event, from the World Chess Championship to the Candidates, the Speed Chess Championship, Title Tuesday, and so much more? Chess.com/events has all of the top chess tournaments played both over the board and online. Analyze and review games from the world's greatest players with live commentary, cloud analysis, opening explorer, and table bases. Find all the key event information, including schedules, prizes, results, news reports, player bios, tie breaks, and more. Even compete by voting for your predicted results. Explore chess.com/events today on web or with our iOS and Android apps and experience chess like never before.
In this video series, I cover the entire 1e4, 1e5 spectrum. So all the openings that arises after our 1e4.
I have had a lot of experience in this. I've played several games with prominence. I had a game against Levon Aronian from the World Team Championship. I also had a game from Gibraltar against Marcus Rager, which is the game that I'm going to show here.
The key here, when this happens, when your opponent finds the resource of playing f4, or you reach this position in your calculations, don't panic.
It's been difficult to watch so many great teams exit the main season of the Pro Chess League. Even those teams with a losing record have exhibited incredible play this season. So, to celebrate all of the talent in this year's PCL, we are hosting an Arena Royale on March 24th. Mark your calendars. That's March 24th. All 16 teams are eligible to play. They will have up to 10 players competing from each team. It's going to be an epic showcase of this season's superstars. Some looking to redeem themselves, some looking to cement their PCL legacy. You don't want to miss this action. Use the command in chat for all the details. Wow, Robert, that's going to be a fun day. The 24th of March with the Arena Royale. We're going to have some big players there.
Oh, because everybody in the league, you can get back from the dead. What is this, zombie land? That you get a second chance. You get to have some fun. It's a bit of an all-star game, and we'll see which team can contribute the most from their players. But this is the last match of the regular season, Tanya. So Arena Royale will have to wait a week. We still have one more round here. And Tanya, it's been all MGD1 as you look from top to bottom of these lineups.
Indeed, it looks like MGD1 are the ones who are having all the fun today. 7.5 to 4.5. Robert, they just need 1 point in this final round of the day. But that said, it almost looked like we won't even get a round 4. So the Garden State Passers have this last life. They need to win 4-0 to take it to playoffs. That is a big ask.
Yeah, sweeping an opposing team that features Arjun Erigaisi and the rest of this lineup. Good luck to you. But as we know, it's possible. It has happened before. If you said that Magnus Carlsen and the Chicana Chess Bros would lose 4-0, everyone would laugh you out of the room. And yet that's what happened when Vida Gujarati had that game, that win, and the rest of the Yogis won their games as well. So, Tanya, we have these 4 matchups in front of us. Who do you like?
Robert, I am loving that this is the final round where we see the top board face off against top board, and that means it's going to be an exciting round. I'm going to correct myself that actually for a playoff, the score is 8-8. So the Garden State Passers, if they're able to win with a margin of 3.5 to half, we will get a tiebreak. If it's a 4-0 sweep, a clean sweep, then actually the Passers are the ones who take it away. But the big question is, where do they strike here? We see Arjun and Adiban, sure, they have the black pieces, but Sam Sevian, what did he do in that last round? Blundering right out of the opening, it just shows that he's extremely shaky today. And a shaky first board is a nightmare in an elimination match.
That's very true, because you're playing a super grandmaster, very strong one at that in Arjun Erigaisi. But if I am the passers, what I need to do is I need my top 3 boards, my grandmasters, to win. I know it's asking for a lot because they're playing grandmasters for their opponents, but you need them to win. You need board 4 to at least make a draw. Easier said than done, because this is a ridiculous ask of a team. But we have seen it happen in the Pro Chess League before, and sometimes miracles do happen.
And that's exactly what they need. I mean, right now, it looks like more than a miracle is what the Garden State Passers need. It's also Harika taking on Kamaluddinova on the 4th board. And if the ratings are something to go by, Harika takes that point. That's actually match over. Now, Arjun, definitely that's not the usual Arjun. He is an angry Arjun right now for what he missed in that previous round. Robert, he starts with the Sicilian. We're going to have fireworks here.
I just haven't heard anyone call him angry Arjun, because he is always so calm and collected. But something, kind of broke in him there. He was really upset. It was a draw. It wasn't the worst result in the world. His team is very likely to win, but he's a chess player through and through. When you have an advantage, you do not want to spoil it like that. And I think I understand his pain. But right now, he plays d6. We get this the kind of Sveshnikov line, which is very popular these days. The pawn goes up to c4 in most of these positions. And look at this. Speaking of setting yourself up, earlier it was Fisher Random. Now we're just setting up for a new game.
Yeah, wow. But this is great stuff. And especially for Sam, when he wants to try to get something out of the opening, I think he should be happy with this. He needs to make sure that there are no more one-move blunders in this one, because Arjun will give him no chances after that. With the white pieces, he needs to create some play. But it looks like Black's the one who's coming forward with all the play. Look at those central pawns. You've got f5, e5. Very often in the Sveshnikov, the fight is for that d5 square. But White's already put a pawn there. And I'm kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, pawn filled the square once the knight trade happened. But what we have here, even material, but an extra pawn for each side. Black with the extra pawn on the e file, white with the extra pawn on the c file. The good news for white is you can at times use your pawns as like a battering ram. Just throw them forward, get rid of this d pawn so you can push your own. It's a long story. These games don't just end on the spot, but that is what white does. We might get the bathtub pawn formation, Tanya, with a5, b4, c4, and d5.
Oh, I haven't heard that one before, the bathtub, but I see where it's coming from. It does really look like that with a5, b4, c4, d5. But definitely, he needs to be fresh out of the bath right now, Sam Savian. He has been yawning this entire match, but he's got to wake up for this. Robert, as you're pointing out, it is going to be a pawn storm on either side of the board. Black with the majority on the king side will play for an advance down the center, while there will be play on the queen side. He first sidesteps with the king. That's just a very useful move in any position. I can't imagine a future g5, f4, g4 ideas coming in here.
Just throw all those pawns forward. But as we're showing, with white throwing pawns forward on the queen side, black on the king side, this is what you want for Sam 7. You need to win the game, and we're talking about playing on opposite flanks. That means that we will get combative chess. And Sam, he's thinking here, he's determining, do I throw in the move f4? Because I'm actually a little bit worried about Tanya's ideas with all these pawns going forward. Maybe I can try to stop those pawns before they advance. And if you play e4, you've handed white control of many of the important squares. Your pawns don't have mobility for black, and white's pawns will march forward on the queen side.
You never want to respond. Well, I say never, but I think the correct way to put it is very often you don't want to play the move e4 in these kind of setups. Because let's say white does go f4. You block the center with e4 and think that, you know what, I get a passer in the center, which is so advanced, but you give up so many squares, Robert, that knight can jump from d4 all the way to e6. You've given white the option to put that bishop on the long diagonal of c3. And you're basically giving up your entire mobility. So that's definitely, even though tempting, not something that you want to create in this position. So f4 would be a big question for Arjun in this moment. How do you want to react? How do you want to keep the tension going in the center?
Yeah, because that's f4. You also don't want to take on f4. Now you have an isolated pawn on d6. The bishop jumps out, attacks it right away. White has more space, and as you're mentioning, this knight can jump back to d4 into the e6 square. So I think these positions are very difficult for black, and f4 does challenge the center, whether it's necessary, because maybe white's quick enough to ignore the center and just play c4, b4, try to go for c5, and that's where Sam is going. He says, let me just push my pawns forward and go for a storm on this side, but this is a mixed battle, right? This game is really chances for both sides.
And this is black's chance, right? To just push f4 and make sure that white never gets that f-pawn going. And then you can start advancing the pawn storm with g5, e4, knight e5, get that g4 pawn rolling. And this will be a race. Right now, it is the race to win this fourth round for the Garden State passer. So let's just zoom out for a moment here, Robert, and take a look at the other openings that we've got going on in this very important match. Well, really, the last life for the Garden State passes. And we see there has been a queen trade on that top right. I'm just loving how everyone against Adiban, white or black, get those queens off the board. That just seems like a match strat today.
Yeah, it's, must-win territory. Let's trade the queens. But you're playing against your opponent's preferences. Let's go into that game because some of these moves seem very strange. But Bortnyk, he excels in these odd openings. And what he wants, he already has double isolated f-pawns. Come on, take me on c3. Why don't you double isolate my pawns over here as well? This is a hideous pawn structure. But what does white have? White has the b file, white has a bishop, and you have to be very careful not to just get checkmated shortly if you are black. So it's not going to be deadly, but white has connected rooks, is first to the action. If you stop this diagonal, because I can't take you on e5, you pin and win the bishop, and I go e3, watch out, your a7 pawn is loose, and a rook will jump up to b3 very quickly. So white does have chances here, and I think that's a common mistake, Tanya, where you get a must-win game. Let's say you're playing in the last round, your opponent has more points than you. You think, I need to just go sacrificial chess. Sometimes it is okay to get into a reduced material position as long as there's life left and dynamism.
Absolutely. And it also has this effect of putting your opponent in some sort of complacency when actually they need to be really alert to still neutralize the pressure that exists. And right now, Adiban is thinking about all these lines that you're mentioning. Bishop c3, I don't expect him to go for this. He hates giving the initiative, giving the opponent the chance to double up on the b file and the d file, threatening a mate on b8. Wow. Clearly, I have no idea what I'm talking about, and he immediately does it, and I am surprised by this decision.
I'm very surprised. Now, I think you are right, but unless he sees that this knight hopping to d5 that quickly solves all of his problems, I really wasn't expecting this, because rook b1 right now looks very simple to play. This rook is going to try to double, but the knight comes to d5, and that's just one check, right? You can get a check in there, but the bishop is under attack. This pawn is under attack. So I guess Adiban, he calculated that it was acceptable. But in a bullet game, he would not have captured.
And it's also the mat situation, right? He knows that if he's able to survive this rook b1, rook b8 idea, he saw this resource with knight e7, knight d5, then he just feels like this just liquidates the position further, gets him closer to that half point, gets his team closer to that match win. And we see it happening on the board. Knight d5, rook b8 would be met by king d7. No damage done there. White has to fall, I was going to say fall back with the bishop to d2, but Bortnyk chooses a more aggressive approach. But this just makes the bishop a little vulnerable in the center. Bishop d4, what does he have in mind for e5, Robert?
Did you see him? He's like, what am I doing? He can't believe
or
it.
c5. Bishop d4, c5.
I think he just made a mistake there, because now he can no longer play for a win. He may be able to make a draw by rook b8, king's in rook b7, like back and forth, and just there might be a repetition at that point. But he's not happy with himself. He survived in the third game against Arjun Erigaisi. That was lucky, but I just think something's been off for the passers from board to board. Yeah. It just doesn't feel like the passers we've seen throughout the season.
Yeah, and you can see it in him. He's shocked at himself as well. He can't believe what he just walked into. Bishop e5, and the point is that the bishop needs to defend the c3 pawn, but you can't survive it on that diagonal for too long. The pawns are going to chase it out. You fall back on d4. There's c5. If you pick up that c5 pawn, knight c3 is a fork. You can see it on him. And you mentioned he got lucky in that last game against Arjun. In chess, if you rely on luck, it's going to run out. You've got to play good games. And now Sam Savian and Alexander Bortnyk have been the star players for the Garden State passers. And we saw Sam blunder in the first 10 moves there. Then we're seeing Bortnyk land up in these positions with the white pieces. Robert, I think you're right. They're just not able to find their rhythm today.
No, and this game will conclude very shortly, because rook b7 check. If black need to play for a win, you'd play king e8. But when a draw is good enough, you're just going back and forth like this. The rook is under attack. The bishop is under attack. And I don't know, Tanya, you have to go back and forth or white, because if you start taking pawns, you lose a piece.
Why is he even thinking now? I mean, rook b8 is the only move. But king d7. And that's a great result for Adiban. And with the white pieces, Bortnyk made no chances. Bishop e5 was essentially just saying that if I don't take a draw, I lose on the spot.
Wow, this is not what you need from the passers. Sometimes it's worth losing, just trying to create chaos and win. But you can see Bortnyk, he's very upset. The whole passers team has underperformed today. And Bortnyk, just a forced draw this early, that makes your teammates feel even less comfortable. Because sometimes, Tanya, in a match like this with teams, you're relying, okay, as long as there are chances, I don't need to have a specific result. Maybe I'm the one who draws and they win. But now when you draw and you're the first game done and everybody knows it, now the pressure is on everybody else must win. You're no longer really playing chess. You're just playing for a result.
Yeah, and we have a result. As you're mentioning, it's a draw. White couldn't have continued. It would have been a worse position, a worse endgame had he traded on d8, because the bishop just doesn't remain stable on this diagonal. You would end up losing a pawn. So it really wasn't an option to go rook d8, bishop d4. You go e5, and after bishop a7, there's rook 8, jumping on to pick up the a2 pawn. The c3 pawn falls as well. This would have been a lost game for Bortnyk, so he had to take that draw. With that done, the pressure is on. This just means that the other three boards, the passers have to win on each and every board to take this to playoffs.
Oh, do not envy their task. It's not fun for them. So team MGD1 needs only one more draw after that result. So the score now is 8-5 in favor of MGD1. And look at Harika, by the way, in the bottom right. She is a good position with white. It's a very complicated position, so the type of position you want if you're a passers fan. And then the top left, Arjun, is better. It looks like his kingside pawn march is happening faster than Savian's queenside action. And the bottom left, Diptai and Ghosh, is also better. So the passers need 3 wins, and they're looking more like 3 losses.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, on each of the board, where are they creating their chances? Robert, I think let's start with the top board, with that left board of Arjun and Sam, because that position does look like the most feisty one that we currently have, with the race that we've been talking about from the start, on the queen side for Sam, on the king side for Arjun. But like you said, the attack just seems faster. Let's do a little deep dive into the Sam Savian Arjun board.
Okay, well, there is a knight that's happily sitting on b6, or is it so happy? Because look at how much action is taking place on the king side. And I'm already looking at this. Can I just throw this pawn up the board and go for it? But the nature of these positions are very complicated and fragile, because white may be threatening c5. And if that happens so soon, with your queen, excuse me, king in line with the white queen, that's dangerous. Just to show, g5, c5, if you think, oh, I'll just take your pawn, great. d6 happens, and that is check to your king and your bishop. You're going to lose material in the game.
Yeah, you got to be careful. And the interesting thing is that Arjun actually voluntarily stepped with the king from h8 to g8 in the last move. And Sam immediately pounced on that opportunity to line up his queen on the diagonal with queen b3, setting up all these tactics that you're pointing out. Arjun says, I don't care. I am going for your king before you get to mine. He pushes the pawn to h4. I think after c5, he was going to go h3, create more weaknesses. So Sam first slows down, blocks that threat of that h pawn advancing further with h3.
But this can backfire in some ways, because g5, g4 works when you have a pawn on h5 to support it. Now it just doesn't feel quite as imposing, and c5 does happen very fast. And it's not c5 to take this pawn. You play c5 to go c6, c7. You have a knight on b6 covering the promotion square. That's a very dangerous runaway pass pawn. And so Arjun is now thinking after the move h3, because his plan is not so clear cut. And sometimes white can even play f3 just to cover these squares and then press forward on the queen side. This is a double-edged position, Tanya, for Sam Savian. They don't have the eval bar off the side like we do. He probably is pretty happy because it gives him winning chances.
This is such an important point that you make to follow it up, that Robert, h4 is so tempting. You want to advance this pawn to h3, but actually once that threat is stopped, you've kind of come in the way of your own attack, because it's not the h pawn, it's the g pawn that you want to take down the board. And I think Arjun's feeling the heat a little bit. He's shuffled around with that king twice already in the last 3 moves. He went with the king to g8, and now it comes back to h8. It is against the ideas that we've been discussing, that queen on b3 opening up. So right now, if c5 is played, Arjun will capture that pawn twice, because there is no check on the diagonal. Now he's jumping in with the knight, putting pressure on f2. It really is a game where anything can happen. White could win, black could win, draw, least likely.
Draw is least likely, but there is a very important situation ongoing in this match. We're going to have to zoom out to our bird's eye view, because as we go there, let's look in the bottom right. Arika Dranavale over there. It looks like she will get, they only need a half point, but it looks like she's about to take a full point for MGD1, and that will seal the match, because that bishop on f5 was trapped. Let's dive right into it. The last move played from black was g5. That bishop is trapped over here. Black's not developed at all, and g5, the queen takes it with check, so the bishop will survive, Tanya. But look at this bishop on c3. Hello, there might be a checkmating attack happening at a theater near you.
Yeah, and for Kamaladinova, that is not a bishop that she's been waiting for. After bishop g6, how are you even saving that beyond a move? If white starts advancing that h pawn, h4, I have a massive threat. h5 coming in. You're talking about that bishop on c3. King h8 is not a possibility. Hard to believe king f8. You can go h5, queen g7 mate. Let's just point that out. Yes, you can step out of the pin, but you cannot step out of the fire. This bishop is throwing down the board. Let's say you go king f7 or king f8, h5 will follow up regardless. You pick up that pawn. That's a mate in 1 on g7. This is busted. This is game over. This is match over.
That's it. I mean, all
she needs to find h4.
She needs a draw, right? That's all she needs. She's not drawing this game. I mean, she is crushing her opponent. And it was uphill sledding for the passers. They needed to win on all of their remaining boards. But this is just convincing. I mean, Harika.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, she lost that game to Lenderman, but she's saying, I can play. I beat Savian. Let's take down Kamaladinova as well. And this is going to be the match.
She slowed down, Robert, but I know Harika. She's not going to miss this opportunity. She's so good at these things. She knows when it's the time to just take a breath and make sure that you wrap up things as quickly and as precisely as possible. It's on the board. h4 played. And I think any moment, Kamaladinova is going to resign. You just cannot fight that bishop on c3. You just cannot survive this h5, queen g7 ideas.
You can take the bishop, but then you're just down in exchange and probably getting checkmated as well. So you take away the biggest piece for white, and it's not going to help matters at all. So I just think that this one is completely over. It's sad news for the passers. James Canty, our good friend, we commentate with him often, but his squad, the Garden State Passers, looks like they couldn't make it work here in the final week.
Yeah, and it was clear, as well as with Sam and with Alexander missing some big moments in their games, things haven't worked out. Let's zoom out here. She does go for the exchange sacrifice that you were pointing at. It was not much of a sacrifice, it was desperation. You have to get rid of that bishop to avoid getting checkmated. And wow, talking about desperation, what on earth is happening on that bottom left board? Black has got Lenderman with those c4, b4 pawns. He's creating his chances against Diptyan.
Yeah, Lenderman, he has some chances for himself, and will it be enough? That's not up to him. He can only control his own game. He's playing very well. He has an advantage. He beat Arika in the previous round in a position that looked like he had no business winning, but he outplayed her in the endgame. So what is the material count in the bottom left as well? It's Black has 6 pawns, White also has 6 pawns, so somehow it's even, but it doesn't look that way. These endings can be very confusing.
Super tricky stuff. And that white is threatening a knight on f6 as well, which now comes to d5. Definitely a very tricky position. And on that top right board, look at that. Sam, the eval bar says that Sam is better here. And Robert, it is the point that you were making, that Black's attack on the king side is stalled. It's stalled for good, while the queen side remains for Sam to take over.
The side that controls the pawn breaks is often the side with the advantage. I say it all the time in commentary. And right now, in the top left, it looks like Arjun setting up a mate in 1 threat, which Sam protects against, of course. And no progress. That bishop on e7 for Black is terrible. And White has pawn mobility. I think Sam 7 is going to convincingly win this game. And Arjun Erigaisi is not going to be a happy camper.
Robert, before we go into that one, I really want to pull up the Harika Kamaladinova board because I think that's going to end really, really soon. And that would mean the match is over. Let's see if we can capture that moment as Harika on the brink of victory, not just for herself, but for the team as well. She plays the move Queen f5. The knight on d7 is hanging. The bishop on f7 is pinned. This is all but over.
Everything is a problem here. So knight f8. But now you can just trade off all the pieces because the attack looked good. And it was. And look at her. She said, nah, I don't have to trade the queens right now. My king is safer. What I was going to say is you can liquidate into an endgame where you're better. Just do not hang this rook. That's the one thing that can happen when you're just, making some queen move careless.
We've seen it happen.
That would be tragic.
No, Harika, she does it. She knows that she's completely winning this endgame. The rook will come onto the d file, will start penetrating along the 7th or the 8th rank. Trades will happen. And Robert, I leave it up to you. I think we can zoom out of this because Kamaladinova will not resign. She probably wants to play on till the end. But there's more excitement and more fight on the other boards.
We have fight indeed. Look at the bottom left, by the way.
Oh.
It looks like Alex Lenderman, he has given up a rook for a knight, but he has 2 passed pawns in the bottom left of the screen. And the top left, Sam Sevian, he's down under a minute, but he is doing well. So as long as Harika Dronavali does not blunder, does not lose this game, the MGD1 squad will win and make the playoffs. But why don't we go to the Sevian game for now? We will keep our eyes very closely on the Dronavali game because she is the one who's looking to lock up the match for MGD1. Because Sam Sevian, he's down under a minute on the clock. And while White is better, this king, it's in some danger.
It really does look scary, right? And we've got the eval bar saying that there are no checkmates on the board. But if we were White, Robert, it would be terrifying to be in this position. With the black rook jumping onto g6, there are all these threats on g2, and to just understand that things on the king side are completely under control is not an easy thing for a player to do. We're just playing under a minute on the clock. Again, regardless of what the eval bar says, I think it doesn't even matter what the eval bar says in these kind of positions.
And Black has a pretty nasty idea. And there it is. I was about to say it. If this bishop gets to e5, there is a king that's in some trouble. I think he rushed that decision. I don't think that White could have stopped the move e4 so easily. But look at Arjun go. He wants bishop to e5. But that's the exact problem. Is the rook was here so quickly. What's your bishop doing here? You need to remove this pawn. If you remove this pawn, you might win the game. But that pawn can't go anywhere, and here go the pawns.
Yeah, the C pawn is definitely going places, but it's amazing to see how Sam has actually kept things under control, used his pieces. The two rooks are the stars in White's position there, defending that G2 pawn, the G1 rook. The F3 rook keeps that bishop on E5 blocked. Nothing to be done, but Arjun there trying to create chances, and that's what he does. He's so resourceful. He attacks that E4 pawn, but in response, the knight jumps back, hitting that bishop on E5. So no time to capture E4.
No, the bishop goes back. It was, oh gosh, now D6. What bishop were you talking about? There's a brick wall in front of it. And yeah, no, White is just cruising at this point. There's no attack. Black has been kicked back, and White has taken over the entire board now.
Absolutely. And you can't really take on e4 with the queen because a queen trade is essentially a resignation, while knight e4 also doesn't help. White has the option to jump in with his own knight to e5 or to pin it, and he does that. Rook e1 coming in, knight e5 is in the air. Queens are traded out, but knight f3 is a check. He says, I don't care about my exchange because the d6 pawn will decide the game on the next move. Robert, rook d7 runs into a million things, including the check, including knight e5, including knight b6, anything that you want. Take your pick. D7, rook e8 coming in after bishop c7, and this is game over.
Unfortunately for Sevian, he is about to win this game, but the match is also over. Marika Dronovalli wins her game against Merit Kamilanova, and so that is a win for MGD1 and a match victory for them as well. Sevian gets a win. He could go into his American Cup game against Hikaru Nakamura with some more confidence, but Arjun Erigaisi, he is not happy right now despite the team winning.
No, he's not. And it's this game, it's the last game, and he knows that he had his chances. I think it was very difficult for him to get over what had happened as well. But this one, what a game by Sam. He just woke up a little too late for his team. Robert, this is the kind of chess that he had to play from the start of the day. You've got one more game still going on where the players are playing on seconds. It doesn't matter for the match result, but the position itself remains quite tense because it's a material imbalance. You've got a rook for two knights in an endgame.
And the knights, unfortunately, are not connected. And even if they do connect, speaking of connection, White is going to have connected passed pawns in a position like this. The rooks are very active. The knights are clumsy. And Lenderman down to 20 seconds. So they don't need to win. Diptyne Ghosh doesn't need this game, but he's going to take it as well.
Yeah, it looks like that. And it's always good that when you don't have that pressure that the result of the team depends on your own board, you can really go all out. You can push this to the very end. And he's right now just pushing the pawns to the very end of the board. F5 coming in. Knight C5 is the only threat that you need to take care of. Diptyne does that, protects that square. And we're going to see these pawns advance further. F6, King F5, E6, E7. No one stopping these pawns.
No, and knight b6. The knights are trying to scramble back towards the black king, but you can just start pushing the pawns. I think f6 goes rook c6 first, just improving his rook's placement. Oh no, it's getting sad. The knights are going backwards. But knight e7, watch out.
Yeah, you've got to be careful. This is what we keep talking about, right? On that, again, I keep coming back to that great question we had about horses or bishops, that when we're playing with less time, the knights can be so tricky. Look at that. They're not really giving him an option, a choice to go with f6, but this is the most that they can do. There's really not much to be done. It's boxed up. That king, rook, knight, knight. It's quite a setup we've got there. Visually, it's quite an aesthetic situation there, but only for White.
Black can hardly move. So h3, I was going to say, if you could pass the turn, I think that Black's in trouble. So both sides trying to pass to each other. If rook a7, what is the response going to be? And he goes f6. He just says, let's go forward. But that was a mistake, apparently, because knight f6 check, and the king f5.
King f5?
Oh, hitting the knights.
He's just calculated it till the very end. He gives up a pawn, but the king is in the attack. The c7 rook is hanging. Now, he can go rook to h7, but that does allow a check on e7. He captures it. The h5 pawn is hanging, and Black's rook is so inactive. Well, he tries to go rook h4. White can even pick up the h5 pawn now.
But apparently, there's some mistakes happened because the rook was able... Wait, what?
Oh, look at... And Alexander's so shocked by what he just did. He just walked into a dead lost king pawn ending.
Yeah,
Black's king cannot make it to h8 anymore. He was shocked at what he just did.
Because he probably forgot the king gets boxed out. King e7, king g7, and thank you very much. The carpet is rolled out for this pawn. And he actually was defending. That's the thing about this position. He went rook e4. He needed to go rook d6 and get after this pawn. Because after e7, you go here. And the king, very importantly, can't cross the 6th rank. So when this happens, this trade is different. King g6, king f8, you're inside the important squares. You hold the draw. This is a theoretical draw. Lenderman, he loses the game. He puts his hand like this. He says, I've had enough. But the team was already lost, so he doesn't have to be too hard on himself about that game.
Yeah, we know chess players, losing always hurts regardless of what it is. And we saw that in his reaction, so close after a difficult game, coming to saving that. It would not have saved his team, as it is Team MGD1 that wins with a 10-6 margin. It did look like a dominating performance by them. Garden State passers never found their flow. And with that, it is the end of the road for the passers. Goodbye to the passers, unfortunately. Team MGD1 advances to the playoffs.
And look at this lineup. So Arjun Erigaisi did not have a great day by his lofty standards. Only 2.5 points out of 4 games. But Harika had the same amount of points as boards 1 and 2 for the opposition. I mean, it was just domination from Team MGD1 from the start. They earned this match victory. Every single player played a key part. And, well, they make the playoffs. So I think a lot of the other teams are not going to be thrilled to see them.
100%, Robert, but a very deserved qualifying spot into the playoffs by the MGD1 there. And of course, we saw that blowout performance. So, Robert, everyone who predicted it wins the featured question of the week.
They predicted a blowout. They got a blowout. So whoever predicted over 2.5, you get it. The final score was 10-6. I mean, what a one-sided matchup it was in the end. So, Tanya, I really can't believe it still. That was some surprising stuff.
Surprising indeed, but I think for us, what was most shocking here was, both these teams, either one could have made it and either one deserved it, but just the way it happened, it just looked like the MGD1 dominated this match. And take a look at that. We've got all our 8 teams that have made it to the playoffs. It is MGD1 is the final team to join the rest of them with the green mark go. They keep going on the race, on the track in their PCL season 23. Robert, what a lineup we've got for the playoffs.
And I'm just imagining Sagar Shah right now. He's probably jumping up for joy. Chess-based India, loving the fact the Indian yogis at the top, they made their way through. And then Team MGD1, so 2 Indian teams. And that's what's happening. I mean, you're from India. You know this firsthand. Your country is home to so many blossoming chess players, and they really earned it. So it's great to see 2 different squads from India make it through the playoffs. And as I look from top to bottom here, Tanya, there's not a single team that I point at and that's the team I want to face. Every team has its strength, and I think that there are really no weaknesses in these lineups for every single team.
Well, that's what we love about the Pro Chess League, right? You start with 16 teams, and then there are these 8 which perform the best, and then they fight it out amongst each other. Indian Yogis, Team MGD1, both the Indian squads make it into the playoffs. Different trajectories, with the Yogis winning back-to-back matches. Dangerous play there, but the one man who's been dangerous today is Adiban, and he will be joining us for an interview on the other side of the break. You don't want to miss the beast, so don't go anywhere.
Hey everybody, it's Danny here, and as you may know, Chess.com and Chessable are now one, and I'm here to show you how you can make your Chess.com and Chessable one in just a few clicks. To start, let's log in and connect our Chess.com account. I just scroll right here above the browser and click Login. Scroll down and click Continue with Chess.com. Now, if you're already logged into Chess.com, it's just going to ask you if you want to approve that connection. I'm going to say yes, sir. But after approving, it'll bring you right back to the Chessable homepage. Now, the Puzzle Connect feature can be found under Tools, and you click Puzzle Connect. Now, what that does after you type in your username is it's going to pull positions from the games you played on Chess.com, create your very own personalized Chessable course, and then quiz you with the positions where you may have missed the best move. And the more you play on Chess.com, the more games it will have to quiz you as long as your account stays connected. It's pretty sweet, and it's going to help you get better learning from the mistakes in your games. Yes, this is a pro feature at Chessable, but if you go to chessable.com/link, you can get 30 days of Pro for free.
Special Master Danny Wrench back again, Chief Chess Officer, bringing you chess terminology. Let's dive right into one of everybody's favorite tactics, if I might be so bold, because it's surprising. It's something that never fails to deliver shock value and excitement, whether you're watching a broadcast or just reviewing some famous chess games. And that is the process of an under promotion. When you move a pawn to the other side of the board, almost always you're looking to get a queen. But the rare times where it's better to get something else, or perhaps even required in order to maybe not stalemate your opponent or keep your winning chances alive, are some of the most fascinating, exciting moments in chess. So with that, let's dive into what under promotion is and show you some of my favorite examples. Under promotion, as we said, is the process of promoting a pawn, but not to the most obvious or most powerful type of piece, which is usually the queen. In this famous example between Nakamura and Vladimir Kramnik, the fact that Hikaru was winning is only because he under promotes on c8 to a knight. That move comes with check on the black king, so that on the next turn, white can capture the e2 pawn. It should be noted that if Hikaru had queened, black would actually go on to win, because now black queens with check, and ultimately Kramnik would have been able to not just save, but actually win this game. An under promotion tactic provided to me by our own Sam Copeland, Vice President of Content. One of his favorite examples is the move d7, and after bishop to e8, the only way to win the game is to under promote to a bishop. Under promoting to a bishop doesn't happen that often. In this particular study, it was designed to be so. The point is that if the bishop moves over to h5, we check and mate along the a4 e8 diagonal, and if the bishop moves anywhere else, white actually plays a subtle move, bishop f7 first, and there is no way to prevent checkmate on the next move. Shout out to everybody watching this video. Thank you for tuning in and enjoying our breakdown of under promotion, and we'll see you on Chess.com.
Welcome back, everyone. What a match we had. What a dominating performance there by the MGD1 team. They are the final team to book their spot in to the Pro Chess League playoff. Robert, that was quite exciting to watch, but I think for the Garden State Passers, it just wasn't their day.
Yeah, not happy for the Garden State Passers, but I think there's a certain person joining us who's going to be extra happy because we have a special guest joining us for an interview.
We do indeed. Let's bring him on. Now, he's played a big role in MGD1's matches so far in the Pro Chess League. Adiban, congratulations and welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, very happy that my team won. So feeling very good about it.
Yeah, it was an awesome play by you guys today. And Adi, I have to ask you now, going into this elimination match, how important was it for MGD1 to make it to the playoffs? What was the atmosphere like before the start of the match?
Actually, it was like we didn't really talk much, and it was like just all the best by everyone, so the entire team. And yeah, we just I think it was kind of still chilled out, and yeah, like to be honest, I was not expecting we would run into the stage. Because after my last Pro Chess match, I thought we would win the next one and qualify. But then I was watching like, oh, we were so close, and yeah, it went out of our way. And so I was like, oh, I have to play another one. I was like, okay, I'll just play one and just my team goes through with 100% performance. I thought that would be great. But yeah, now I had to ruin my 100% score. And but okay, I'm very happy that team made it.
That is very funny, Adiban. And my question for you is, when Arjun Erigaisi, he was clearly frustrated after not winning the third game against Alexander Bortnyk. Did you speak as a team between the matches? Are you guys communicating throughout? Maybe talk about a little preparation as well. What's the camaraderie like between your team?
I'm not sure I should reveal it. I was thinking, no, but the actual truth is, none of us were communicating. Yeah, so that's the truth. So, because all of us, I think, are using our mobile, yeah, for the side cam. So we really can't communicate even if we want to. So that's the thing. Guys, we should do something about it. We need I need another. Or you can send me an extra mobile. That would be very helpful.
But Adi, it's probably for the best. So each of you can just focus on your games. Now, coming to games, I wanted to ask you. Now, when we were looking at them, it just looked as if every game you played, each of your opponent would just trade off the queens. It's almost like they didn't want to play a middle game with you. Did you feel that while playing that you want to get that chaos, that crazy stuff that you play, but you weren't able to do it?
Oh, no, actually, the first game, it was, I think, kind of forced after knight b4 at some point. He has to go to the end game. So, first game. Second game, it was stupid. I was just winning an exchange. And I thought I wanted to go to an end game. So, that was really bad decision because I think the end game was not so advantageous like I had thought. But if I had maybe taken the exchange, it would have been better. So, third game, no, last game, it was like, yeah, it looked a perfect game. Actually, I was very surprised when I checked with the computer. It was like just a perfect game actually. Like I thought I maybe missed some chances at some point, but anyway, I had the score in mind, so I was like, okay. I was hoping like someone would win, and I think we just needed 1.5 to win the to qualify, right? I think because we were leading by 3 points, so we just needed 1.5 points. So I was like, okay, every draw gets us closer to the qualification. So yeah, I was like trying to play like a team player, not playing my usual crazy stuff.
Yeah, well, you played a great day of chess. The pro chessing has been good to you. I mean, do you love playing in team tournaments? Of course, you've been a mainstay of the Olympia team as well. So what's that experience like for you? Because most of chess is played individually.
Yeah, no, actually, I really love to play in team tournaments because I somehow feel actually I am at my best many times in team tournaments. Because, when I'm playing an open, I can do whatever I want. And many times I tend to overdo stuff. But in team tournaments, I know like everyone is counting on me. So I try to play like little bit, how do I put it, more serious and more accurate chess. So if the team loses because of me, it's like very hard to take. So that's why I think I also got a gold medal on board one in world team. So that is actually one of my best performance till date. So yeah, I think playing in team tournaments is a great experience. And when sometimes you have to do the job yourself, and sometimes you have to let the team, you have to trust your team that they will do their job. So it's a great feeling, and I just love to play in team tournaments. So and also I just recently I'm fresh back from one of my team victories. Like we had like a very top secret oil event, and our team just won. So it was, yeah, I think I'm feeling lucky and on a roll.
Yeah, the congratulations for that one. That was a big win. It happened in Pune. And Robert, I have to tell you, with Adiban, he truly is such a great team player. And what he said about him being the one which the team wants to get the points from, to score from. But Adiban, you also have to agree that you're the one player who gives the heart attacks to his team members, because there is just absolute madness on the board, no matter whether you're white, whether you're black, but you're the guy to go to when it's about getting the points. Do you even know the concept of playing safe? I've always wondered.
Yeah, actually, I do because that's what I tell. No, only in team tournaments I can relate to this, because I remember I was playing with Dingliran, and so I was like going H4 G4, and then suddenly I realized Ganguly is going to win against Yu Yangi, so that was a great victory. And suddenly after H4 G4, suddenly I went F3. And I was like becoming very safe, yeah. So I was not pushing the pawns anymore. I was just trying to hold on. So yeah, that's why, I said, I love team tournaments, because I can try to play solid and yeah, let the team do it their job. Yeah.
Well, I mean, your team has been excellent all season long. You have made it into the playoffs, and well, we know what the playoff bracket is like. So, Adi, we're going to show you that right now because Team MGD1, you take on the Levitov Chess Wizard. So, I guess what do you think now that you hear that that's your matchup? What do you think about that squad and how your team fares, how the chances are like?
No, wait, we are playing with Levito Wizards, not Gotham Knights.
Yep. You're playing with the Levitov Chess Wizard. That's where you slot in.
Yeah, then I really, my manager, I really want to change the manager because he just said we are playing with Gotham Knights. So, like, I mean, like, okay, just very upset with the unprofessional.
Adi, are you talking
behavior.
about Srinath?
Yeah, Srinath, of course. Srinath, yeah. Obviously, who will come? We just finished the match and he just said, oh, guys, come on. We are playing with this team next. And okay, yeah, now. I was very upset, yeah. So, no, I have no idea.
Well,
so, this is the team, yeah. Oh, wait. Oh,
Yeah.
we have Dupo. Okay, yeah. No, already I'm very excited to play, actually. Like, so with Mohamed Dupo, yeah, this is great. Yeah, but I'm not sure. Let's see. When are the dates? I'm not sure if I will have the time. So, let's see. If I hope it doesn't clash
Well,
with
Adi,
anything. That's all.
it will be in May, and that was so fun to watch your reaction after seeing Duba because most people, Robert, would be a little scared, but Adiban's like, I'm already excited about this matchup. I get to face Shakrar, I get to face Duba. Adi, love that spirit, and it's always such a pleasure to watch your games and to commentate on them. Super fun. And we've got some fun questions from chat as well for you. So we're going to bring those up. Speaking of games and speaking of fun stuff on the board, now, one of the most shocking moments today was when Sam Savian just blundered that G7 pawn against you in one move. What happened there? And what was Alivan Chess wants to know what was going on in Adiban's head when Savian blundered his G7 pawn.
Yeah, I was shocked. I mean, like, it's been like, I don't know, at least 1.5 years since I did the Chessable course on 1B3. And I was following my course till some point. And I mean, people are still blundering pawns on Moon 9. Yeah, so I really don't know. I mean, it's like, I mean, the course, I went from Knight F3, but eventually we transposed to my course. And I had a feeling this might happen. So I went through my course a bit. And I'm like, that was a shock. I was trying to understand what he actually missed. Yeah, maybe I think at some point, people can never take B3 seriously. I think that's the running joke, yeah. Robert, what do you think? Will you ever take B3 seriously?
I play it all the time in every single blitz game. Go look at my history on Chess.com. I'm a B3 cowboy, okay? I'm a hippo connoisseur.
Nice.
So, yeah, Adi, I got you. You don't need to tell me. You don't need to sell me your chessable course.
Wow.
I'll help you write the next one.
Robert, I can't believe that you're saying this. Adiban, let me tell you what actually happened in that game. Robert and I had a side bet, and I said you will go for 1B3, and Robert said that you will not go for 1B3, but you played it on the second move. Who do you think wins that bet then? Does Robert win it or I win it? You decide.
Robert, of course. No, because eventually we got to my course. So yeah, I think Robert. No, because if it doesn't get to my course, maybe I can win. But yeah, I think No, whenever you play B3, it will transpose to my course. So yeah, I think it doesn't matter whether it's the first move or the second move.
I agree. So I did give Tanya the nod there. And well, I have a question about that game against Sevian. It's a feature chat question from Goran Chess. And the question is, was that the saddest Rook H7 you've ever seen?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, at some point, I didn't want to finish the game because it was so pretty, and I was like, okay, should I just keep playing? But then I thought, okay, it's a team tournament. I should not do this nonsense. So let me just because it was so pretty after Bishop of 6. Like the Rook, it's like Rook on H7 and King G8. Just everything is logged. Yeah, so it was just one of my best games in B3, I think. Yeah, I will add it to my course probably. Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, that worked to perfection. And like you said, you wanted to play on, but such a nice way to finish with that E pawn advancing to E6 and to E7. Adiban, congratulations. And before we let you go, finally, I want to ask you, because we will be back with you and the MGD1 and the Pro Chess League playoff in May. What's up? What's next for you? Where do we see you next?
Next, yeah, I think I'll play in Sharjah. So that's why I'm not sure about the dates. Yeah, like I'll play in Sharjah and I'll probably also play in Dubai. So I just don't know what are the dates. So I just hope there's no clash. So yeah, that's my next tournaments. And also, I think in July we have the World Cup. So also looking forward to that. I don't think the venue has been announced yet, but yeah, I just qualified from the Asian. So I'm really looking forward to playing in the World Cup this year.
Adi, we wish you all the best, and we of course look forward to seeing you back with MGD1 in the Pro Chess League playoff. The team is definitely going to need you. Thank you so much for joining us and for entertaining us with your chess.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Robert. Thanks.
Thanks, Adi.
Wow. Robert, we have got the big reveal of the playoff action that's coming up in May at the Pro Chess League, the 8 teams that have qualified, and these are our brackets.
Yeah, no, this is awesome because you heard it from Adiban. His manager thought they would play the Gotham Knights, and he was looking forward to playing Hikaru and Limley and Fedoseva and all of them. But no, they played the Levitov Chess Wizards, and then we heard his reaction, right? Tony's like, oh, Dubov and the rest of the squad. So there are no easy pairings, no matter where you look in this bracket. But Tanya, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Which matchup are you most excited to see in the opening round?
Well, all of them. I mean, these have been the 8 best performing teams of the PCL week after week, and I think it's hard to pick one, but I'm also very excited to see Indian Yogis take on the Blitz team. So we're talking Vidit leading from the front, and he will be up against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, against Alexander Grischuk, Katrina Lano's team, and that is going to be a tough battle. Now, the Yogis and the Gotham Knights, they had such a great start at the Pro Chess League. 3-0, back-to-back wins, punched their tickets into playoff in dominating, convincing styles. And now it is about this phase, the knockout phase. And Robert, I have to say the tension is so high because there are no chances. There are little margins for error. And we've got the Gotham Knights facing the defending champions as well. I mean, all around this bracket, big fight.
I'm really looking forward to one matchup in particular, and it is the St. Louis Archbishops against the Gotham Knights. Of course, we'll see Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura play, but that's not what I'm excited for. I'm excited to see Alice Lee play against Hikaru because Alice Lee just took down Super Grandmaster Bogdan Daniel Delac. She's been beating Grandmasters, drawing against them. I think we have, of course, the most popular chess streamer on Twitch in Hikaru Nakamura. Then we have probably everybody's favorite in Alice Lee. Just to see them clash, potentially in the first round of that matchup, what more could you ask for in a Pro Chess League playoff match?
I'll tell you what more we could ask for. Robert, the age-old question, so you're saying, is finally going to be answered. In the Knights versus Bishops matchup, which is stronger? Will it be the Knights or will it be the Bishop? We will let these two teams decide. We've also got the Tigers taking on the Gnomes. And as Adiban said, super excited to face Dubov's Levitov Wizards. The Wizards have been playing some magical chess. They've got to step that up in the playoff season. This is only going to get hotter.
It's going to be awesome for sure. We do have to wait a couple months. That's the sad news that the Pro Chess League playoffs will not commence until May. But, Tanya, we have so much great chess before then, whether it's the Chessable Masters. And, well, there's a certain Arena Royale coming up next week. So the Pro Chess League will have some, even if it's not playoff time just yet.
Well, the Arena Royale we are also excited about, which will see all the teams return. It is March 24th, so mark your calendars for that one. It's going to be a fun ride. And then after that, as you mentioned, we've got the Champions Chester with the Chessable Masters coming up. The chess never stops on Chess.com. It's been such a fun day alongside you, Robin. I had a blast commentating this with you. Chat, thank you so much for joining us and being on this ride with us. We will see you on 24th of March.